Chapter 905. It's Lord Jinka. Audiobook got excited. Everyone turned to look at the skinny figure in the sky. As always, the legendary Lord of Sword Spirits displayed his formidable battle strength. With just one arm, he blocked an attack that even Feng Xing, who was in her goddess of war form, had to admit would be hard to resist. Below, Boss Jean and his employee Ling Huan were completely dumbfounded. At this moment, they finally understood why this group of people could eliminate the brush spirit the moment the exorcism convention began. That was a power on a completely different level. Boss! Don't talk, I need to calm down. At that moment, Boss Jean and his employees were both taking deep breaths. Jinka's appearance in the air stunned Bai Qiao's arrogant and despotic face. She frowned and secretly exerted force, but found that her Ahogue divine sword couldn't advance even an inch. This child's strength was astonishing. Judging from its aura, it didn't seem to be that strong. Go away, I don't hit children. Bai Qiao stared at Jinka with a strange feeling in her heart. She was formed by heaven and earth and born of the sun and moon, so she had the power to know everything in the world. This was why Bai Qiao had the guts to lash out and ridicule everyone when she came to the shop. But in the entire process, there were two people she couldn't completely see through. One was that youngster called Wang Ling. Although her venomous tongue sounded a lot, it was in fact all on the surface. Bai Qiao didn't fully understand this youngster. And now, there was another troublesome character here. It was the child who had suddenly appeared in front of her. Bai Qiao could vaguely sense the connection between the child in front of her and her. But she didn't want to admit it. She was used to being free and undisciplined. The human world was rich and colorful, and there were so many games that she needed to play. She didn't have time to play house with a child. Follow me back. Jinka stared at Bai Qiao, and his languid tone was the same as usual. He clearly had the body of a child, but there was an unquestionable sense of dominance in his tone. Bai Qiao sneered. Don't order me around. I have a lot of games to play today. There was still much to see. My favorite author, Ku Xian's new book, The Only Koi in the Cultivation World, is going to be published today. I still have to hurry to subscribe for him. Look at him cross-dressing. Everyone present was dumbfounded when they heard such an ample reason. But in the face of this arrogant and resilient otaku, Jinka's expression didn't change in the slightest from beginning to end. His gloomy gaze gave Bai Qiao goosebumps all over. It was said that spirit swords took after their masters, and Bai Qiao could see that this child looked exactly like its master, who was watching the show from below. The master was not easy to deal with, and the sword spirit was not easy to deal with either. It looks like I'll have to be a little more serious. Bai Qiao sighed in her heart, and then her expression turned serious. Treasury of hairs. In the next moment, everyone saw the Ahogue divine sword in the air actually split into countless fine needles. Under Bai Qiao's control, these thousands of fine needles rained down on Jinka. All this time, Jinka hadn't let down his guard. With a flick of his sleeve, a protective sword light formed in his small hand, and this attack of fine hair, which was like a torrential storm of tang-sect pear blossom needles, was dispelled by this brown protective sword light. Audiobook couldn't help saying, judging from Miss Bai Qiao's reaction after Lord Jinka showed up, it doesn't look like she doesn't know who he is. But every move she makes is deadly, and focuses on vital parts. Down below, Audiobook, Dog 2 and Feng Xing all blushed with shame as they watched. This kind of scene of domestic violence was really frightening to watch. The needles that were like a rainstorm descended onto the ground like a myriad of shooting stars, and they blasted the ground to the point it was in a complete mess and was covered in scars. Countless houses in an area of a few tens of kilometers were instantly destroyed and smashed into pieces, and it was a horrifying scene. However, this still wasn't Miss Bai Qiao's full strength. Feng Xing was well aware that this Miss Bai Qiao's overall battle strength was above that of a true immortal. And the same was true of Lord Jinka's battle strength. This was a showdown between the sword spirit and the scabbard spirit, and it would be very hard to predict the outcome until the very last moment. But while the current situation looked blurry, it was very clear who was on the offensive and the defensive. Miss Bai Qiao's attacks were getting fiercer and fiercer. Their auras exploded on the field, and each blast of spirit power exploded in all directions. Everything in the wake of the ripples was destroyed, and the grass, trees, and houses were all turned to dust. It was as if the end of the world had come. Their spirit power was so powerful that it directly materialized and rushed out to destroy the grass and trees. Jinka, on the other hand, was on the defense from beginning to end. What? You're not going to attack me? Miss Bai Chao laughed wildly. Suddenly, she was enjoying the feeling of fighting a little. She had been cooped up at home for too long, and it wasn't bad to come out and exercise every once in a while. She originally didn't want to be too heavy-handed with a child, but for some reason, Bai Chao actually felt that the more she fought, the more exciting it became. She didn't know when it had started, but she couldn't take her eyes off Jinka. As the battle progressed, a strong obsession kept lingering in her mind. Wang Ling could actually understand this kind of scenario very well. It was like when you were at school and your female deskmate kept trying to pinch your thigh. You thought she was bullying you, so you went to tell the teacher. The truth was that the girl liked you, but didn't know how to express it in words. It was like the boy in the back row always grabbing the girl in the front row's pigtails. Thus, most straight men would lose a beautiful relationship after their thighs were pinched. And now, Bai Chao's feelings couldn't be any worse. The more she fought, the more she wanted to bully him. A hogue throw up. Bai Chao was brimming with fighting spirit. She extended her ahogue infinitely, wrapping Jinka up in layers. Then, like a rocket, the ahogue on the top of her head directly sent Jinka, who had curled up into a ball, into outer space, where it circled the earth several times in a row. In the end, he turned into a meteor and crashed down hard. Not good. Feng Xing realized that things weren't looking good. If this meteor crashed down, it would definitely cause a huge disaster. But at that moment, Jinka's aura finally emerged, and a powerful gravitational force came from the dumpling wrapped in a hogue. Everyone had no time to react at all. On the other side, Bai Chao was already sent flying with a blood-curdling "Aya." When everyone came back to their senses, Bai Chao's two pure white legs were already firmly on Jinka's shoulders. Ajwa. This is Jinka assassinating King Qin? Dog 2 didn't quite understand. But Miss Bai Chao isn't the person with the most hair. No. Feng Xing shook his head and gave an aggressive analysis. The reason why Miss Bai Chao's ahogue can extend infinitely is very likely because it absorbs nutrients from the other hairs on her body. Thus, Lord Jinka deduces that ahogue is also related to her leg hair. Furthermore, after the ahogue extends infinitely, it's already longer than all of us here. All of our leg hair put together isn't as long as one of Miss Bai Chao's ahogue, right? Everyone was stunned. There was this kind of operation. Chapter 906. For any girl, it was an extremely humiliating thing to have both of her thighs carried by a man. Miss Bai Chao was naturally the same. She already had no time to worry about the fight, and covered her face with both hands, completely at a loss. The last person who had shown this expression had been the scholarly girl by the riverbank. At that moment, their postures and expressions almost overlapped across time and space, and Wang Ling couldn't help secretly clapping his hands in amazement at the sight. It was very clear that Miss Bai Chao had lost because she was a scabbard. As a scabbard, she and Jinka came from the same source, and her true battle strength was about the same as Jinka's. But as a scabbard, Miss Bai Chao had forgotten her identity as a scabbard. A scabbard existed to protect the sword itself. But Miss Bai Chao had just gone berserk from the fight, and had put the cart before the horse as she actually wanted to press the sword under her body. Jinka had no choice but to activate his passive skill, Jinka assassinates King Qin. This move had actually existed from the very beginning to limit the scabbard's strength. The layers of space dissipated, and everything nearby returned to normal. The broken world returned to normal the moment the layers of space were lifted. It was as if nothing had happened. The shattered ground and the smell of smoke from the battle had disappeared. Everything had disappeared. Miss Bai Chao hugged her knees as she crouched in a chair. She wasn't noisy anymore, and had already lost her initial arrogance. She just pulled the cap on her head very, very low, and started to sob rhythmically. Woo, woo woo, woo 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 woo, woo 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 woo. Although she was sobbing, Miss Bai Chao didn't shed a single tear. Is Miss Bai Chao trying to say something? Ajwa scratched his head. He suspected that she wasn't crying at all, but was trying to express something. Who would cry with musical notes? It was like Morse code. No. This was the Morse sword code. Standing next to her, Jinka translated expressionlessly. She said that she has no face to see anyone. Wang Ling, Feng Xing and Dog 2. Woo-ah! 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 She said that even if she was beaten to death, or jumped down from here, she wouldn't be my scabbard. Woo-ah! Ah! Woo 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 ah ha ha. She said that love between an older woman and a younger man won't end well. In fact, this wasn't the first time Miss Bai Chao had cried. She was usually like this when Boss Jean didn't buy games for her. But Boss Jean didn't understand a single word of Miss Bai Chao's Morse sword code. In the end, despite Bai Chao's special background, she was still a little girl. Under normal circumstances, when a young lady cried, there was usually a hidden meaning in it. However, this was not the way to go on. They couldn't get any information, and naturally couldn't understand this Miss Bai Chao's heart. The only thing he knew was that Bai Chao still missed city life, and wasn't willing to go back to being a well-behaved scabbard. They had painstakingly searched for the scabbard because they wanted the scabbard back. But you can't use force on a girl. These were all consensual matters. Miss Bai, if you keep crying like this, only Lord Jinka will understand. You have to calm down, then tell us what you want and we'll think of a way to solve it together, Audiobook said earnestly. Then, he pushed Feng Xing over. Feng Xing. Audiobook said telepathically, classmate Feng Xing. Lord Jinka's happiness is also related to Shifu's happiness. Little girls like you the most when you're a man, so we're counting on you. To be honest, Feng Xing had refused at first. He was actually quite a vengeful person, and had been very unhappy with Bai Chao's mockery of his gender earlier. The White Knight spell was his father's unique secret technique, and he had no choice but to change gender after using it. But Bai Chao had actually used this to personally attack him, which directly caused Feng Xing's impression of this Miss Bai Chao to turn negative from the very beginning. But Audiobook's words reminded him. Swords follow their masters. Since ancient times, spirit swords and their masters had been inextricably linked. It was like the personal maids of noble ladies in ancient times. Ladies naturally had to be concerned about their maids' happiness. If their maids were doing well, the ladies would also be happy. So, this was all for Wang Ling's sake. Thus, Feng Xing took a deep breath and decided to brace himself. Miss Bai Chao, if there's anything you're unhappy about, you can tell me. My chest is all for girls to lean on. Feng Xing flipped his beautiful blonde hair and then held out a hand to Bai Chao in a very gentlemanly manner. After a few minutes, Bai Chao stopped sobbing. She looked up at Feng Xing, her eyes empty. Everyone was overjoyed at this scene. It had actually worked. When all was said and done, she was still a girl. Audiobook was secretly delighted. Just as he was sighing in his heart that Feng Xing was worthy of being a girl killer, Bai Chao suddenly swatted Feng Xing's hand away. F***CKU. I don't talk to dead ladyboys. Feng Xing, I'll F***CKU. Classmate Feng Xing, calm down. Audiobook hurriedly stepped forward and wrapped his arms around Feng Xing's waist. Let go of me. I'm going to have a showdown with her today. Everyone knew that at that moment, Feng Xing's heart was on the verge of collapse. Everyone had their own pain. Feng Xing himself was helpless in his own pain. After all, this was something his father had left him. For a moment, the room fell into silence. Bai Chao knew she had said the wrong thing, and buried her head in her knees again. Just as Boss Jean had said, Bai Chao had been raised by his side all these years, and was already used to being free and undisciplined. Furthermore, it was said that this venomous tongue had been stimulated by her noob teammates when she had been playing games. So much so that her venomous tongue had already become a habit of hers. Calling her a dead ladyboy was indeed too much. But in fact, it was unintentional. She just didn't want Feng Xing to get close to her. Who would have thought that she would blurt out the word, dead ladyboy? Miss Bai Chao, things have already come to this point. So why don't you be straightforward? What other wishes do you have? Audiobook stared at Bai Chao and said, Actually, your return doesn't mean that you'll lose your freedom. You can still play the games you want. No one will restrict you. But you can't forget that you and Lord Jinka are one. Can I have any wish? Any wish? Audiobook nodded. Bai Chao raised her head and instantly perked up. I want to develop a game. Chapter 907. Bai Chao's wish was unexpectedly unique, but it wasn't impossible. After the exorcism convention, Boss Jean received a huge bonus. He was exceptionally good to his wild daughter, even if in Bai Chao's eyes, this daddy Boss Jean was nothing more than a tool for her to enjoy herself. After discussing the conditions, Bai Chao and Wang Ling signed a new agreement. As long as Wang Ling could fulfill her wish to develop a game, Bai Qiao was willing to return. But now, there was another problem. Everyone here was made for playing games, not making them. Not only did games need to be creative, they had also been progressively stricter in recent years. A lot of new games couldn't even get approval from the relevant departments, and in the end ended up rotting in the hands of the game companies themselves. The result of such a huge investment was that the game couldn't even be sold. For a moment, game companies large and small in the market were in a predicament. Thus, the problem was what type of game to make. The MOBA games that had always dominated the top of the list were dominated by large game companies such as Horsegoose and NetHard. If they developed a similar type of game, it would be very difficult to get a slice of the cake from these game companies. Taking 10,000 steps back, even if the game was really excellent, small game companies couldn't compare to these established companies in terms of server operation and maintenance alone. Once a large number of users poured in, the servers would most likely blow up. But Bai Qiao already had her own ideas about game design. If a new game wanted to find its place in the monopolized game market, creativity was the key factor. It was August 29th, the 16th day of the summer break. Wang Ling's room was unprecedentedly lively as a lot of people came. Wang Ming, who had been oppressed in the lab by Zhai Yin for a long time, also came. But it wasn't Wang Ming himself, but the long-range mecha armor he was controlling, Wang Ling too. After the last trip to Beast King's remains, the newly developed Wang Ling 2 had already been upgraded and improved on the basis of Wang Ling 1. Not only could it be controlled remotely for combat, it could also be recalled with one click to merge with the original body. The most important thing was that Wang Ling 2 had basically turned into an artificial intelligence and had its own consciousness. In other words, Wang Ling 2's function was now infinitely close to that of the high-level clone Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch, which Wang Ling had created with the Great Separation spell, and its memories would also be synchronized with Wang Ming's brain. The only difference was that Wang Ling 2's fighting strength wasn't as strong as Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch's. In the room, Dog 2, Jinka, Little Silver, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Wang Ling 2 formed a circle around Bai Qiao. "Tell me about your design first, then leave the rest to me," Wang Ling 2 said, the synthesized voice of the virtual human with Wang Ming's distinct voice. "I want to design a sandbox cultivation simulation game with a high degree of freedom." At the mention of the game, Bai Qiao's expression lit up, and her eyes lit up. "I'm going to call this game Cultivation Simulator. The characters, spells, cultivation techniques, magic artifacts, including the world itself, can all be designed on their own. What the players have to do is not to manage the characters, but to manage the entire world. They have to consider the balance of the various forces in the world and maintain the order of the world itself, so that the world they create can achieve sustainable development. This is the key to this game." "So, the key to the game is to operate the entire world? Is there a pay-to-win mechanism?" Little Silver asked. As a fellow gaming fan, Little Silver had been living at Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's house for the last few months, and had played all the games on the leaderboard and all the ones that could be played with pay-to-win. What Little Silver abhorred the most was that Dungeon and Devils on Earth. This game's weapon-strengthening mechanism really left Little Silver speechless. He had even thrown in the money for takeout, but couldn't upgrade it no matter what. Later, Little Silver had watched videos online and realized that those who had successfully upgraded their weapons kowtowed as they did so, and used their foreheads to click the mouse to show their sincerity. Pay-to-win doesn't exist. This is an absolutely fair game. But in order to set up a profit point, you can make some clothes to sell. Can wearing clothes increase your attributes? For example, 10 attack points? Little Silver raised his hand and asked. No. Bai Qiao shook her head resolutely. Then what about power struggles? This will happen naturally after you design the world's parameters and basic characters. For example, you can set up how many major forces the world will be divided into, how they will be distributed, and so on. But the composition of the forces and the scale of their construction will depend on the character parameters. Each character's talent, attributes, personality, and so on. Players can freely design them from the start. In the preset world, these characters will develop freely according to their attributes and personalities, and finally form their own forces according to the preset script. All of this can't be controlled. You need to set up a good personality at the beginning. Can we set up a world without evil people? Dog 2 asked. Yes. In this free cultivation world, the players were God. If you want to set up a perfect world without evil forces, that's naturally not a problem. But whether such a world could continue to operate in the end was a problem. Everyone has heard the story of the catfish and the sardines, right? Civilization grows in strife. Without pursuit and desire to change, the world itself won't progress, Bai Qiao said. Wang Ling too nodded. I more or less understand what you mean, but sandbox games also need a template and some basic programming parameters. I need some real data to use as a reference. Right after Wang Ming said this, before Wang Ling could say anything, Book of Sage Immortal suddenly said, I've calculated that there's a 98% chance that my lord will have me find a suitable world for simulation. Wang Ling. Can you do it with this heavily corrupted tablet? Bai Qiao's eyes sparkled. Yes, Miss Bai Qiao. It's very simple. Book of Sage Immortal replied. Book of Sage Immortal then projected an image of an earthy blue planet. These are the parameters of Earth from the 10th universe 600 million years ago. Now, Miss Bai Qiao, you can create your character. I'll use the current development of the 10th universe to make calculations and simulate future developments. It's not just Miss Bai Qiao. Everyone else here can try to create your own characters. Let's see what kind of impact they'll have on the world in the future after they've been created. Saying this, Book of Sage Immortal turned its gaze to Wang Ling. My lord, do you want to create the first character first? Book of Sage Immortal was well aware that its master was, after all, Wang Ling. Giving its lord priority in creating a character was equivalent to giving him face, and there was a 78% chance that he wouldn't smash it. Chapter 908. Funding and setting up a server weren't a problem. As for the specific design of the game, Wang Ming would rearrange the structure and algorithm of the entire game based on the parameters recorded in Book of Sage Immortal Simulation Experiment. This was just a game. Over the years, Wang Ming had created so many strange magic treasures, and even the humanoid magic treasure head of State 001, which was used in battle, had been created by him. The difficulty of designing these scientific cultivation magic treasures was far higher than that of a game. After confirming the general direction, the simulation experiment became the most important factor. Wang Ling stared at the image projected by Book of Sage Immortal and fell into deep thought. To be honest, he still hadn't thought about what kind of person he wanted to build. At that moment, Wang Ming, who was remotely controlling Wang Ling too, suddenly said, It seems that Ling Ling is still thinking. Should we redefine the world first? What kind of world is the 10th universe? Book of Sage Immortal replied, There are subtle differences between each universe, and cultivation civilizations are uneven. But most of them have already entered the era of national cultivation. The era of national cultivation. This phrase sounded very lofty, but if one were to look back tens of thousands of years, this was simply unimaginable. The first person in the universe to discover the existence of spirit qi, and turn it into spirit energy to embark on the path of cultivation was the father of cultivation. Rumor had it that the father of cultivation was also the discoverer and developer of the 3,000 great spells. However, historians had always held different views and debated endlessly who the father of cultivation was. A small number of historians even believed that there was no such thing as a father of cultivation at all. Cultivators had existed since the beginning of the universe. But they were a very small group of high-level people who kept a low profile and passed on the art of cultivation from generation to generation. It wasn't until the study of cultivation gradually expanded bit by bit, and the ranks of cultivators continued to grow that the world finally entered the era of national cultivation after tens of thousands of years. In fact, both theories had their own arguments. Wang Ming, on the other hand, believed in the father of cultivation. Above true immortal was true venerated, above true venerated was venerated immortal, and above venerated immortal was Tao venerated. Then what about above Tao venerated? Could there be a higher realm? In that case, could the person with the strongest realm be the legendary father of cultivation? Or perhaps this father of cultivation wasn't the father of cultivation at all. Perhaps he could also be called an immortal king? Wang Ming smiled. Since the 10 universes have already entered an era of universal cultivation, can we establish a world with very few cultivators? This question caused everyone present to be stunned. A world with few cultivators? What does Brother Ming mean? He asked. It's a world dominated by ordinary people. Cultivators only occupy a very small proportion of this world. Moreover, there is an agreement among cultivators that they cannot reveal their identity as cultivators in front of ordinary people. If they violate the agreement, they will suffer the wrath of heaven. Wang Ming said, Everyone, just think about it. If such a world existed, wouldn't cultivators living in the cracks eventually replace ordinary people and lead the world into an era of national cultivation? So, this is another spiritual energy revival theme. No, the spiritual energy of the world has always existed, and so have the cultivators. What I want to know is, if 99% of the people in the world are ordinary people and only 1% are cultivators, will this 1% completely replace the other 99% in time? Wang Ming said. This question caused Wang Ling's room to fall silent for a moment. It was Miss Bai Qiao who suddenly laughed. She hadn't thought about this before. As a sandbox simulation game with a cultivator as the theme, Cultivation Emulator allowed players to freely create a world of cultivators, and indeed allowed for this kind of situation. Who said that cultivators had to be the dominant force at the beginning of the world? Bai Qiao thought this proposal was very interesting. This sounds like a very interesting world. In any case, it's just a simulation. Maybe we can give it a try. Then, let's try to set up the parameters of the world. So, is this the world I imagined? Wang Ming also laughed. That's right, the parameters of the world have to be designed from the very beginning. For example, the ratio of cultivators to ordinary people, the ratio of men to women, the initial population of the world, and so on. After the most basic parameters are set, the game officially begins. After receiving the first instruction, Book of Sage Immortal immediately started its own simulation settings. After Book of Sage Immortal compiled the parameters of the world, it displayed them in front of everyone. World, a barren world of cultivation. Age of the world, 4.8 billion years. Ratio of ordinary people to cultivators, 99%/1%. Civilization state, modern civilization. Education level, 9 years of universal compulsory education. World state, peaceful development. Power number, 1231. Book of Sage Immortal. Now, you can design your own characters. These people will be born in this world, but how long they can live and how much impact they can have on the world will depend on their specific applications in the world. After that, a chart of the character's attributes appeared in front of everyone. These were the basic attributes, which could be changed freely. Furthermore, the appearances of these characters could all be set by molding their faces. Looking at Jinka's appearance, Bai Qiao made a character that looked similar, but it was a girl. It's done! A cross-dressing version of Jinka. Hiya here. Miss Bai Qiao was very pleased with herself. Wow! It really looks like him. Audiobook praised. But Miss Bai Qiao, it looks like you and Lord Jinka gave birth to you. Bai Qiao's face instantly turned red. Who gave birth to him? She grit her teeth, made the character's hair a little longer, and then added a hogue on top of the character's head. She then quickly corrected herself. It doesn't look like him. I'm molding myself. And so Bai Qiao's character was as follows. Name, Bai Gu. Gender, female. Intelligence growth, 8/10 endurance growth, 8/10 defense growth, 8/10 strength growth, 8/10 figure growth, 10/10 appearance growth, 10/10 kindness points, 10/10 evil points, 0/10 personality. Silly, why are they all 8 except for appearance and figure? Dog 2 asked. I already said that I'm molding myself, so of course I have to look like me in appearance and figure. As for everything else, I'm the best. I definitely can't be stronger than the me in other worlds. Everyone. What kind of character does Master want to design? Little Silver asked curiously at that moment. Looking at the character panel, Wang Ling had a rough idea of what to do. He started to design his own character. Name, Qin Zong. Chapter 909. The character that Wang Ling had created was a little special. Everyone looked at Wang Kun's pet character data panel. Name, Qin Zong. Gender, male. Intelligence growth, 2 out of 10 endurance growth, 2 out of 10 defense growth, 2/10 strength growth, 2/10 figure growth, 2 out of 10 appearance growth, 2 out of 10 kindness, 5 out of 10 evil, 5 out of 10 luck, 10 out of 10 personality. Good and evil, Buddhist, free and easy, lively. Master has created an ordinary person. But his luck is off the charts. Little Silver thought it was interesting. When Book of Sage Immortal simulated a character with an intelligence growth of 3 or below, it would automatically classify the character as an ordinary person. The character data panel wasn't completely fixed. Attributes could be added at will, and it wasn't even possible to set intelligence growth. Then, when the character appeared in the world, it would be a mentally retarded setting. Everyone had custom-made their own characters. All along, Wang Ming had longed to embark on the path of cultivation. He envied Wang Ling, so he had created a cultivator character for himself, and maxed out all the attributes he could. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had positioned himself as a great botanist, and in the zombie crisis of the future, he had successfully developed pea shooters to fight zombies. While everyone was setting up their characters, Audiobook suddenly thought of a question. If we set up these characters and let them live according to the settings in the game world, will they awaken their own consciousness? At that moment Wang Ming said, "This is relative. For us, these people might just be a bunch of data. But as a sandbox game with a high degree of freedom, these game characters who live in it might all have their own consciousness. They might look like they're being manipulated by us, but they also live according to a predetermined way of life in their own world." It sounds a little complicated. Audiobook frowned. Then I'll make it simpler. Wang Ming said, just like when we create these game characters, we can be called gods. In that case, have you ever thought that we might have been created by a greater god? Perhaps as we speak, a pair of eyes is watching us. Suddenly, everyone in the room couldn't help shivering. F***K. You scared me. Buttface felt as if all the fur on his body was standing on end. It's my fault, I shouldn't have talked about such a scary topic. Audiobook wiped the sweat from his forehead. In fact, similar scientific evidence had existed a long time ago, but now that he was looking at it again, he still felt terrified. However, the atmosphere in the room became lively because of this discussion. Looking out the window, he couldn't help feeling a little absent-minded. A world created by God. Wang Ling said in a low voice. Although it was very quiet, Little Silver and Feng Xing heard it clearly. They had realized a long time ago that it wasn't that Wang Ling didn't talk. Sometimes, he just didn't want to. Just like Wang Ling, who liked to peek at the screen, this was a master who was outwardly passionate on the inside. What they didn't know was that in that moment of absent-mindedness, something extremely terrifying had happened. August 29th, Tuesday, the 16th day of the summer vacation. A brand new game called Cultivation Simulator had entered the sights of summer vacation students. The high degree of freedom in the gameplay and the godly sense of behind-the-scenes manipulation very quickly attracted a group of beta players. 10,000 gift certificates for beta accounts that didn't delete their files were snapped up within a minute after it was released, and the game's popularity was comparable to that of a special sale at midnight on Double 11. Daoist Guang was very happy to advertise the game in his live stream room. After a period of development and promotion on the platform, Daoist Guang's live stream room had already become the big brother of the big brothers on the platform. The average number of people online in real time reached 30 million per minute, which was an unprecedented record. Thanks to Brother Guang for the game's promotion this time. In the group, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sent a grinning emoji to express his gratitude to Daoist Guang. Brother Grenade-throwing. What are you saying? It was just a small effort. But this game is really interesting. I tried it out in the live stream room just now and saw that the number of pre-orders for the game has already broken 1 million, and this is just for a single platform. Looking at all the gaming platforms, it definitely won't be difficult for it to break through 10 million in the next few days. Daoist Guang smiled. It just so happens that the popularity of PUBG has dropped recently, and I've been worrying about not having a game to play. With the release of Cultivation Emulator, perhaps it'll create a wave. There were many factors that contributed to a game's popularity, and Cultivation Emulator's success was due to its creativity. Of course, another big reason was that it was now the summer vacation, and most of the students had nothing to do at home. In the class group, Super Chen was extremely excited. He and Dopey Gua were fanatics when it came to games to begin with. Although Cultivation Emulator didn't have a trailer, Daoist Guang's demo video had been recorded by the Light Chasers and uploaded to major video websites. This kind of publicity was already no less effective than a game trailer PV. This game is pretty good. Super Chen sent several excited emojis in the group. I was so bored that I started playing DNF. In the end, after weapon strengthening failed, all my hopes turned to dust. Weapon strengthening. How much did it cost? Dopey Gua couldn't help asking. I spent more than 10,000 a week on it. I even used up a tenth of my New Year's money from last year. Seeing this, Wang Ling couldn't help pursing his lips. Why were all his classmates so rich? Saying this, Super Chen sighed. But I have a feeling that this cultivation emulator will definitely explode in popularity. In front of the screen, when Wang Ling saw Super Chen's words, he instantly knew that the game was in the bag. Super Chen. But it's so annoying. He had sent out too few private beta accounts. I tried to grab them before, but they were gone before the browser even popped up. Dopey. Do you have any uncles who work in a game company? Think of a way to get 2 accounts. Dopey Gua. You don't say. I really do. Super Chen, Wang Ling, Dopey Gua. But the creator of this game isn't a company, but an independent creator. My uncle has already used his connections to ask the bosses of several game companies, and all of them said they didn't know this creator. Now the only way is to buy back closed beta accounts at a high price, but I heard that the price has already reached tens of thousands, and it's only going to get higher and higher. Question mark. Super Chen was amused. Don't tell me Wang Ling or his relatives made this game? Wang Ling. Super Chen. Wang Ling, I know you're looking at the screen, why don't you come out and say something? Wang Ling. Chapter 9-10. At the same time that night, on the holy pillar in the demon world, second-generation demon saint, who was observing the crystal magic ball, felt the scales all over his body explode, and a bad premonition reached the depths of his soul. With a crack, the magic ball in second-generation demon saint's hand suddenly shattered. The demon saint magical bead actually cracked. This is a great omen. On the side, Sage Master Shen Wuyue also revealed an extremely astonished expression. As a Sage Master who had assisted generations of demon saints, Shen Wuyue naturally knew very well what the destruction of the magical pillar meant. As early as the first demon saint, the magic bead had cracked once, but it was only a very small crack. The next day, the first demon saint got hemorrhoids, and when he came out of the toilet bowl was filled with the first demon saint's blood. The closest time the orb broke was when the mysterious expert who used the fishing line to connect the Kuan and used it to probe the different spaces appeared. Back then, the identity of the angler was very mysterious. But now, the identity of the angler was clear. It was Wang Zhen from the domain of the gods. This time, the cracks on the magic bead were even more thorough. It actually split into 8 pieces like a watermelon. This. Old Shen, what is going on? Second-generation demon saint was a little flustered. He had never seen such a situation before, and fine beads of sweat instantly trickled down his forehead. Shen Wuyue stared at the shattered magic ball in silence for a while. To be honest, he'd never seen a situation like this before. Now, he could only rely on the handbook first-generation demon saint had left behind to judge the situation. Shen Wuyue hurriedly flipped through the demon saint codex from beginning to end. Second-generation demon saint watched on the side, clearly a little anxious from waiting. Second-generation demon saint, what's the situation? Shen Wuyue muttered to himself for a while and said, the pearl has 8 petals, the chrysanthemum is broken, second-generation demon saint. For a moment, the palace at the top of the holy pillar fell into a long silence. Regardless of whether the chrysanthemum stain was real or not, what was certain now was that this was definitely a print. As long as you can't run away. If it's a broken chrysanthemum, there's nothing to be afraid of. Second-generation demon saint laughed. My lower body is a fishtail, and I don't have a chrysanthemum at all. Shen Wuyue frowned. But Lord Demon Saint must pay attention to this matter. Since ancient times, the shattering of magic beads had never been a good thing. Because the previous demon sages didn't pay enough attention to this matter, they all suffered a great calamity in the end. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a violent tremor came from the sacred demon temple. A crack appeared in the void, like a spider web. A powerful aura could be felt. Both second-generation demon saint and Shen Wuyue were familiar with this scene. They thought of the multi-fanged Kuan that had appeared in the palace before. Lord Demon Saint, be careful. Shen Wuyue kicked second-generation demon saint aside and stood in front of him. Second-generation demon saint spat out a mouthful of blood with a pft. At this moment, a crack appeared in the void, and a 3-headed, 9-tailed firebird flew out. Phoenix? Second-generation demon saint took a closer look. Shen Wuyue shook his head. This firebird had fine teeth in its mouth, accompanied by the 7-colored 9-tailed phoenix plume. This is the primordial 3-headed phoenix. It's another extinct divine beast? Second-generation demon saint was stupefied. He had never expected that his palace would have a constitution that could attract divine beasts. Rua! Before the two of them could react, this three-headed phoenix that had appeared out of nowhere directly opened its mouth and spewed raging fire. Rainbow divine fire. Shen Wuyue was so frightened that his hair stood on end. He kicked Demon Saint away again. Lord Demon Saint, be careful. Second-generation Demon Saint was sent flying into the distance and spat out a mouthful of blood. His sternum was already broken after the second flying kick. How dare you, evil creature! Having already dealt with the primordial vicious Kuan, Shen Wuyue was completely fearless in the face of the three-headed phoenix this time. He removed his antlers and threw them forward. At that moment, the antlers, which were spinning at high speed, turned into two boomerangs with powerful cutting power and slashed at the phoenix like chainsaws. Shen Wuyue controlled his mental power to the extreme as he manipulated the antlers on his head. These antlers were a life-bonded magic weapon that his clan had refined and were impervious to water and fire. But since his opponent was the three-headed phoenix, Shen Wuyue still felt a little uneasy. This was Rainbow Divine Fire. Rumor had it that it was a powerful divine fire born from the combination of the Yang Heart divine fire in the sun's core and the power of the three-headed phoenix clan's phoenix. Once tainted by it, it wouldn't stop until one died, and wouldn't be extinguished by any external factors until the object was completely burned out. But why is the three-headed phoenix here? Shen Wuyue couldn't figure it out no matter how he racked his brains. The three-headed phoenix this time and the primordial vicious Kuan last time had both appeared so suddenly that it could be described as baffling. Their Demon Saint Palace was about to become a rare animal protection center. Shen Wuyue, this fire phoenix. At that moment, second-generation Demon Saint, who had been kicked twice, came to his senses and slowly got up from the ground. He wanted to ask about the three-headed phoenix, but the situation was urgent and Shen Wuyue was in no mood to pay attention to Demon Saint. The three-headed phoenix let out a long cry and swooped down. The sound of the phoenix swept through the air with an intimidating volume. The antler boomerangs were directly shaken off their original tracks. Lord Demon Saint, be careful. The phoenix's sound can captivate one's soul. You need to seal your ear orifices. Shen Wuyue roared. But it seemed that second-generation Demon Saint had already fallen for it. Holding his head, he swayed left and right and his steps were unsteady, as if he was performing the famous comedy skit, Hai Wa is Dead, performed by a certain female star. Lord Demon Saint. Seeing this, Shen Wuyue kicked him a third time. The current situation was critical, and using magic to dispel it would waste time. On the contrary, physical correction would have a miraculous effect. Suffering this third kick, second-generation Demon Saint coughed up another mouthful of blood. This was the largest mouthful of blood he had ever coughed up, and it was horrifying like a fountain. But after this third kick, Shen Wuyue realized that he couldn't drag this battle out any longer. He had to end it quickly. If this went on, Lord Demon Saint would be at his limit before the three-headed phoenix was dealt with. This trash Demon Saint. He was clearly the one fighting, but in the end, he was the one who was coughing up the most blood. Forget it. Shen Wuyue sighed in disappointment. He stared at the three-headed fire phoenix in front of him, and his expression finally turned serious. Shen Wuyue rarely revealed his true form, but at this moment, the arrow was knocked on the bowstring, and he had no choice but to release it. Demon Saint's palace had now become the #1 target for foreign invaders. Where was the dignity of his majestic Demon Saint Palace? It didn't matter whether there was someone behind this who wanted to deal with Demon Saint's holy palace, whether it was intentional or not. But as the sage master who had assisted first-generation Demon Saint until now, Shen Wuyue felt that he had to step forward. The demon world wasn't devoid of people. And Lord Demon Saint. And he, Shen Wuyue. For this reason, Shen Wuyue directly swallowed the antler that he had removed earlier to use as a boomerang. The aura of a giant prehistoric beast descended, and the three-headed phoenix was so frightened that it actually dropped a few of its feathers. Chapter 9:11. Old Shen Yu. Second-generation Demon Saint clutched his chest. His chi and blood had been in turmoil from those kicks, and he had almost died. But at that moment, the bursting aura in the field made second-generation Demon Saint's fishtail tremble slightly. The scene in front of him actually caused his eyes to sink into a long trance. This was the first time second-generation Demon Saint had seen Shen Wuyue in his beast form. Apart from the word, beautiful, Second-generation demon saint actually didn't know what else to use to describe the scene in front of him. Shan Wuyue had grown taller. Even the wrinkles on his face had disappeared, and he looked nothing like his doddering old self from before. He had become incomparably handsome. His flowing silver-white hair fell to Shan Wuyue's ankles, and from his shoulders to his collarbone, there were patches of dark green scales. There was a red mark embedded in the center of his forehead like a gem, indicating Shan Wuyue's current identity. Realization suddenly dawned on second-generation demon saint. No wonder Shan Wuyue had been unwilling to reveal his beast form in front of everyone. Shan Wuyue was the descendant of a deer qilin, a hybrid of a primordial divine deer and a primordial qilin. Since ancient times, hybrid divine beasts had never fared well with either family, and the divine beast tribes would regard them as heretics, a species that shouldn't exist. But it was an indisputable fact that divine beasts often had very powerful combat strength. But divine beasts had gone extinct a long time ago. Second-generation demon saint had thought that Shan Wuyue was just a rare deer divine beast, and had never thought that he would actually be a deer qilin. Naturally, in this deer qilin form, Shan Wuyue's personality and combat strength would change, and even his personality would change. This was also one of the main reasons why Shan Wuyue had always been unwilling to reveal his true form. He gazed at second-generation demon saint. Without that old look, Shan Wuyue's gaze in this form actually seemed a little tender and affectionate, and second-generation demon saint's heart rippled like a spring breeze. Oh no! This was... Second-generation demon saint's old face turned red. He was actually flushed from being stared at by his own sage master. The point was that he clearly knew that Shan Wuyue was a man. Not counting your batch, I've led 2 batches of demon saints. Judging from your aura, you seem to be the weakest batch, Shan Wuyue said leisurely, and even his voice sounded very pleasant. Second-generation demon saint. Shan Wuyue, a mere 3-headed phoenix actually managed to injure you to this extent. Demon saint's lips twitched at these words. Why was he injured to this extent? Shan Wuyue, why? After saying that, Shan Wuyue raised his head to look at the horizon. The 3-headed phoenix in the sky had been observing him since the beginning. It had been quite intimidated by Shan Wuyue's aura after deer qilin transformation, and even a few of its feathers had fallen off. Shan Wuyue, demon generation Wuyue said. The 3-headed phoenix clan, Shen, It and Phoenix Saint, and Wuing Shen, Phoenix Saint, Dragon, and a formless wave of spiritual energy followed Shan Wuyue's movement and grabbed towards the 3-headed phoenix. The 3-headed phoenix screeched in fright and spewed out rainbow-colored divine flames from its mouth, but Shan Wuyue faced the flames fearlessly. Shan armor, that qilin the armor was Yong, Lu Shen of Lu of Demon, which Shen spirit Lu had Lu God. The rainbow divine fire roasted Shan Wuyue's palm and the back of his hand, but it actually didn't bring him any pain at all. The spiritual energy in Shan Wuyue's palm was as vast as the ocean, and it firmly imprisoned the 3-headed phoenix like a birdcage. It was very much like how Tathagata had imprisoned the 9-headed golden condor in the past. No matter how the 3-headed phoenix struggled, it was useless, and it was directly caught firmly in Shan Wuyue's palm. I was wondering what kind of powerful beast it was. This 3-headed phoenix is only a... Shan Wuyue grabbed the 3-headed phoenix and played with it in his hands, folding its wings again and again, and even twisting its 3 heads together like a fried dough twist, as if he was playing with 1,000 paper cranes. That 3-headed phoenix was completely autistic, allowing Shan Wuyue to do whatever he wanted. It dared to be angry but didn't dare to say anything. He single-handedly captured the 3-headed phoenix. This was too strong. Behind them, second-generation demon saint was flabbergasted. He'd never thought that the difference between Shan Wuyue before and after transformation would actually be so great. Even the horse monkey Soju was no better than this. An adult 3-headed phoenix might be a little stronger, but this one is still underage and can't even speak. It's boring. After playing with it for a while, Shan Wuyue felt bored, so he put the 3-headed phoenix on his shoulder. The 3-headed phoenix didn't even dare to move. Second-generation demon saint was extremely excited. Old Shen. Want to praise me? Or are you going to give me a bonus? Shen Wuyue smiled. Old Shen, your gender. I'm a man. And right now, I'm my second personality. Although my appearance has changed a lot, I'm still wearing one. Oh. Second-generation demon saint sighed inwardly and couldn't help looking disappointed. I'll have to maintain this form for a while until the antlers that were eaten grow back. Shen Yue pursed his lips. It's all because Shen Yue is too stubborn. In fact, if he really runs into a situation where he can't win, there's no harm in calling me out. In any case, once the antlers grow back, the personality will switch back. Shen Yue. That's what I call his first personality. He also calls me Yu Yu. You can call me that too. Shen Yue narrowed his eyes and curled the corners of his lips into a brilliant smile. This was the first time second-generation demon saint realized that even a man could have such a beautiful smile. Speaking of his experience as second-generation demon saint, it was purely because he had been tricked by first-generation demon saint back then. If first-generation demon saint hadn't deliberately scared him and made him pee under the holy pillar, the holy pillar wouldn't have forced him to become second-generation demon saint. What was the most painful thing about being demon saint? For second-generation demon saint, the most painful thing wasn't managing and maintaining order in the entire demon world. It was the lack of freedom. His range of activity was restricted by the holy pillar. Before he found the next demon saint, he could only stay in demon saint's palace above the holy pillar for the rest of his life. Thus, second-generation demon saint had originally been very resentful of being demon saint. Not only did he have no freedom, the only person who accompanied him was that boring and stubborn old man, Shen Yue, who always liked to undermine him in front of outsiders. But now, second-generation demon saint suddenly realized. Even if he stayed in demon saint's palace for the rest of his life, it didn't seem too bad. At the very least, the transformed Shen Yue was a pleasing boy. It was a pity. He wasn't a girl. But at the very least, he was much better than that boring Shen Yue. Where did this three-headed phoenix come from? Second-generation demon saint asked. Shen Yue turned his gaze to the three-headed phoenix on his shoulder. This little fellow had already been completely tamed. The little fellow chirped a few times. Although it didn't speak human language, Shen Yue still understood it. It says it's from outside the domain of the gods. Domain of the gods. Second-generation demon saint turned pale with fright. Chapter 9:12. Because of Wang Zhen's descent, everyone already knew about the domain of the gods. But now, before they could figure it out, a domain of the gods outside the domain of the gods had suddenly popped up. What kind of place was this? Both Demon Saint and Shen Eryu were very curious. Should we report this to the Office of Strategic Deception? Second-generation Demon Saint asked. The Office of Strategic Deception is currently our demon world's biggest partner. You can make the decision yourself. There's no need to ask me for advice. Shen Eryu said indifferently. But for this domain of the gods outside the domain of the gods to be able to rear a three-headed phoenix, the strength of the people inside is definitely not simple. Also, look. Speaking up to this point, Shen Eryu pressed his fingers against the neck of the three-headed phoenix's middle head, and actually pulled out a thin thread. Second-generation demon saint felt that this scene was a little familiar. This thread is made of a very special material, but what's certain is that this three-headed phoenix is being manipulated. This thread is a little stronger than the one Wang Zhen used, and it acts as a puppet. No matter what it is, as long as it's connected to this puppet thread, it can be manipulated from behind the scenes. Seeing this, second-generation demon saint's eyes darkened. He sensed that the winds and clouds in this world. No, perhaps the winds and clouds in this universe were about to be blown into ripples. It was Wednesday, August 30th, the 17th day of the summer break. In the last 2 days, Miss Bai Chao's creative new game cultivation emulator had been everywhere, whether it was on the school's Tieba, the class group or the hot headlines on various major platforms. The game's popularity exceeded everyone's expectations. It hadn't even been officially released to the public yet, but the number of pre-orders had broken 10 million in 2 days. This was something no one could have imagined. Thus, the Office of Strategic Deception set up a game group, with Miss Bai Chao as the group leader. This was a show of goodwill, a way to rope her in, and even more to stabilize this Miss Bai Chao's heart. After joining the sect, they would be one family. And most importantly, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal offered Miss Bai Chao a high salary that she couldn't refuse, so that she wouldn't have to ask her cheap father, Boss Jean, for money to buy games. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal found someone to finish building the game group's hall on the same day, and hung a game group sign on the door. But the truth was that the game group's interior was more like an internet cafe. When other people in the Office of Strategic Deception wanted to relax and have fun, they could directly enter with the Sect Jade Talisman. Sect disciples had free internet access. Moreover, they could also enjoy unlimited refreshments and tea services in the internet cafe according to their class levels. All the computers in the gaming group's internet cafe were of the highest grade. If visitors from other sects wanted to enter the internet cafe, they would have to pay 50 immortal gold per hour. It could be said that the Office of Strategic Deception's plan was already in full swing. The hot sales of Heavenly Dao Broccoli and the development of the Cultivation Emulator game had now become an important source of income for the Office of Strategic Deception. That day, several Immortal Palm Tree sect disciples who had gone to the Office of Strategic Deception to buy broccoli passed by the game team's internet cafe. However, when they entered, they were shocked by the high prices of the internet cafe. So expensive. The Immortal Palm Tree sect disciple shrunk his neck. 50 immortal gold per hour, 5 immortal gold per sausage. Why is your grilled sausage so expensive? The Immortal Palm Tree sect disciple questioned the little brother at the front desk with his head lowered. If you want to buy it, then buy it. If you don't, then just watch. This little brother was none other than sect leader Su Xing, who had been present at the Office of Strategic Deception's opening ceremony back then. For a previous review, see Chapter 817, One Man's Sect Leader. At the opening ceremony last time, Su Xing had used his palm techniques to win a match and obtained a first-class holy weapon as a reward. But to date, apart from Su Xing, sect leader no longer had any other disciples, and even the sect's business license had expired several years ago. Later, grenade-throwing senior immortal had made Su Xing stay at the Office of Strategic Deception. Furthermore, Su Xing was someone who could subconsciously comprehend Heavenly Dao, which was a great help to the study of Heavenly Dao. Now, Su Xing was already part of the Goon team, and his direct superior was Feng Xing. The gaming group had just been set up, and Miss Bai Qiao was busy playing games. So Feng Xing sent Su Xing to the gaming group to look after the internet cafe. No matter what the occasion was, there had to be someone to keep watch. Su Xing had shown off his skills at the sect celebration last time, and had been covered by numerous media outlets. Although the sect leader wasn't a high-level sect, a lot of people had already recognized Su Xing after his appearance last time. When they raised their heads now, the two Immortal Palm Tree sect disciples had stunned expressions on their faces. Why is it you, Brother Su? One of the Immortal Palm Tree sect disciples, who looked like the senior brother, reacted quickly and immediately laughed out loud. The ingredients in this sausage are Heavenly Dao Broccoli, Heavenly Dao Crispy Noodle Snacks and hand-picked dragon pig meat. One sausage costs 5 immortal gold, and it's definitely a fair deal. Don't talk nonsense when you go out. Su Xing chuckled as he stared at the two of them. He rubbed his palms together as if he was sharpening a knife, and when his palms met, they actually made the crisp sound of godly metal colliding, and the two disciples couldn't help swallowing. This wasn't because they were salivating from the aroma of the sausage, but purely because they were frightened by Su Xing. During the sect celebration, the video of Su Xing's palm had been broadcasted to all the major platforms, so the two disciples naturally knew how powerful Su Xing's palm technique was. 5 immortal gold. Worth it. I'll buy it. Thus, the senior brother decided to give them face. He took out a gold note from his wallet, which could be directly exchanged for immortal gold, and had a different denomination from ordinary coins. There were denominations of 50, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. The senior brother took out a 50 immortal gold note, which made Su Xing laugh. How many do you want, little brother? The man weakly raised a finger. One finger. What's wrong with you, little brother? You're not buying one for your junior brother? 2 sticks then. Let me confirm 2 10 immortal gold bars. There's a discount when applying for a membership card now. Top up 500 and get 500 free. The membership price is only 3 immortal gold for 1 sausage. Do you want to do it? What's wrong with you, little brother? The salary of Immortal Palm Tree Sect should be quite high, right? Can't even afford 500 immortal gold bars? Or are you not giving me face? I'll do it. The Immortal Palm Tree Sect brother gritted his teeth and decided to go all out. We have bronze members here. Top up 500 and get 500 free. Gold members top up 1,000 and get 1,000 free. Diamond members top up 10,000 and get 10,000 free. What kind do you want? Is there a difference? The bronze sausage membership price is 3 immortal gold bars, the gold membership price is 2 immortal gold bars, and the diamond membership price is 1 immortal gold bar. We'll also give you 1 free every day after you log in. P.S. Put up a flag that probably no one will see. Before the first day of the new year, if this chapter says it breaks 150, I'll prepare for 10 chapters to explode during the new year. Chapter 9:13. The 2 immortal palm tree sect disciples were now extremely regretting coming to this internet cafe. This was too much. But they had to give Su Xing face. Everyone knew that after the last sect celebration, Su Xing and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had become very close. Who was Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal? On the opening day of the Office of Strategic Deception, even the 10 generals gave them face. Furthermore, the Office of Strategic Deception was currently the only light force that directly cooperated with Wuxia Alliance. Therefore it was very important to be happy. On the day of the sect's celebration, Immortal Palm Tree Sect hadn't sent a representative. The sect leader of Immortal Palm Tree Sect was now full of regret. So he signed a large order with the Office of Strategic Deception on the day the Heavenly Dao broccoli went on sale. On one hand, it was an apology. On the other hand, it was a show of sincerity for future cooperation. As for Immortal Palm Tree Sect disciples, there was no need to even mention them. There was now a clear rule in Immortal Palm Tree Sect that disciples must vigorously support all of the Office of Strategic Deception's businesses. Actually, just this alone was enough to make the 2 disciples unable to shirk the responsibility. They couldn't let anyone catch them. I'll get a gold one. After making up his mind, eldest senior brother gritted his teeth and took out a few gold notes from his wallet. Su Xing glanced at the junior brother beside him and found that this junior brother was secretly laughing with a gloating expression. He hurriedly said, "Since you've already decided to apply for a gold membership, why don't you add another 500 and charge 1,500? You can upgrade it to a combo package. 1 card can be used by 2 people. Take care of your junior brother. But the extra 500 will have to be paid by your junior martial brother." The junior brother's expression instantly turned ashen. He couldn't refuse, so he took out 500 gold notes and made a combination card with his senior brother. On the other side, Su Xing happily accepted the money. Just as he was entering the customer information, he suddenly remembered and looked at the 2 of them. "Ah, right. Do you want to add another 500? Our internet cafe has just opened for business, and there is a redemption service. Another 500 immortal gold can be exchanged for a crispy noodle snack packet." We don't have money." The 2 Immortal Palm Tree Sect brothers were about to cry. Su Xing smiled. "Don't regret it." Actually, it wasn't that they didn't have the money, but they felt that the exchange wasn't worth it. 500 immortal gold for a bag of snacks. Only a fool would do that. 10 minutes later, the pair from Immortal Palm Tree Sect left with their gold membership cards for the Office of Strategic Deception's internet cafe, both of them with despairing expressions on their faces. Su Xing leaned his elbow against the door as he watched the 2 fools leave. It was still Wednesday, August 30th. Not long after the 2 Immortal Palm Tree Sect disciples left, a van with the logo of the General Administration of 100 schools drove directly to the entrance of the Office of Strategic Deception. A group of people got out of the car. Wang Ling, Super Chen, Hero Gua and Little Peanut. Number 60 High's Grade 1. Class 3 squad had assembled. In the car, Super Chen had already been jabbering away for a long time. He couldn't believe that he had actually received an invitation from the Office of Strategic Deception. Last night, he had clearly been complaining that he hadn't gotten a beta number for Cultivation Emulator. But the next day, they had sent him an invitation. The invitation was signed by Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and stamped with a gold stamp. They were invited to visit the Office of Strategic Deception's newly built internet cafe, along with a set of tickets for each hall and a gift bag for the internal beta test. Feng Xing got out of the car in the front passenger seat and smiled. "Don't celebrate too early. We're only allowed to visit today. We're underage, so be content that Senior Audiobook entrusted Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to send us an invitation." "So we're really only allowed to visit?" Dopey Gua and Super Chen were a little disappointed. "It's good to have a gift bag for the internal beta test. In any case, we can take it back to play." Little Peanut grinned. As commissary in charge of studies, under Dopey Gua and Super Chen's lead, He had already completely embarked on a path of no return. I told you Wang Ling is a mascot. Super Chen rubbed his head, still a little amazed. But why did Senior Audiobook suddenly invite us? Did you forget that Wang Ling borrowed Senior Zhua's spirit sword at the spirit sword exchange meet? Senior Audiobook is expressing his gratitude, Feng Xing replied. Feng Xing and Audiobook had already colluded last night to come up with this excuse. I told you, Wang Ling is a mascot. Hearing this, Super Chen didn't doubt it, and directly laughed heartily. Otherwise, I would have thought that classmate Wang Ling had opened the Office of Strategic Deception. Feng Xing, Wang Ling. As Feng Xing had said, they were only here to visit the internet cafe this time. The Office of Strategic Deception's internet cafe was a regular internet cafe, so it naturally had to look like one. They couldn't even go through the back door. Holy shit! As soon as they entered the internet cafe, Super Chen was immediately startled by the scene in front of him. He felt that this couldn't be considered an internet cafe at all. It was simply built like a palace, and all the computers were holographic pods. As long as you lay down and put on a helmet, you could directly connect to the internet. You could do whatever you wanted. Even if you played for a long time, you wouldn't feel tired. Once you entered the holographic pods, you felt like you were in a dream, and your body was completely relaxed. Furthermore, the holographic game pods that grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had bought were very advanced and came with a massage function. Feng Xing had already informed Su Xing before they came, and as he showed them around, he introduced them to all kinds of information about the internet cafe. These holographic game pods are also the latest model, and there's also an excretion device at the bottom. If you want to go to the bathroom midway, you can directly turn on the toilet mode. When that happens, the holographic pod will directly turn into a closed-off toilet. Su Xing said, "Do you see that button with the word poop drawn on it? That's the toilet mode button." What's that? At that moment, Dopigo pointed to the button below the toilet mode button, which looked like two fish balls strung together. This is the bouncing egg mode. Considering that some customers might be so happy in our holographic pods that they forget their duties, we added this mode. Its main function is to moisten the intestines and ease the bowel movement. Everyone knows that lying down or sitting down for too long can easily lead to constipation. Your service is really thorough. Dopigo sighed. All the excrement will eventually be collected in the wastewater tank, and after special treatment, it will be turned into fertilizer for the Heavenly Dao broccoli breeding shed. The internet cafe just opened today, and there are already a lot of nascent soul and soul formation customers. Their fertilizer is actually quite hard to come by. During the introduction, Su Xing kept glancing at Wang Ling out of the corner of his eye every now and then. Except for Super Chen, Dopigo and Little Peanut, everyone here was well aware of Wang Ling's identity. Chapter 9:14. There wasn't a single core member of the Office of Strategic Deception who didn't know Wang Ling's identity, a reclusive big shot who pretended to be a 16-year-old high school student. It wasn't just Wang Ling. Everyone in the Wang family's small villa was also a big shot. This was all thanks to grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's brain and internal propaganda. It turned out that sometimes it wasn't bad to have friends who could make up stories, since they could actually save a lot of explaining. In any case, these people were all core members and grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's confidants. Their mouths were trustworthy, and they wouldn't take the initiative to spill the beans. Wang Ling knew that his reclusive big shot hat couldn't be removed from these people's minds. Even if they knew he was still in high school, they would still feel that this was an Almighty's bad taste. In many people's eyes, the reason why Almighties could become Almighties was because they more or less had some eccentricities. It was a good thing to cultivate steadily, and the truth of having one's feet on the ground would never change. However, people with eccentricities often had very strong egos. Generally speaking, in the cultivation world, it was easier for people with their own personalities and independent styles to succeed. This might sound like fallacious reasoning, but it was in fact true. Wang Ling himself also felt that he had some eccentricities, such as his penchant for peeping, his passion for crispy noodle snacks, and his love for studying. Father and Mother Wang had probably instilled in him from a young age that studying was always a good thing. After all, he was only 16 years old, and his experience was far from that of those old seniors who had lived through the millennia and witnessed the country's rise to prosperity and power step by step. But while Wang Ling loved to study, there were times when he also liked to goof off. Otherwise, he wouldn't have enchanted the monster pen and goblin eraser to do his homework for him. In order to keep his grades down in exams, Wang Ling usually studied ahead of time. He could do all the homework himself. Sometimes he just didn't feel like it and was too lazy to do it. Of course, most of the time, Wang Ling didn't do his homework because he was in the mood, but purely for the limited edition crispy noodle snacks. His homework couldn't be sold for much money. Sometimes, as soon as he brought it to school, Super Chen and Hero Gua would run over and start copying it with the godly skill of the flow of multiple pens. It was said that during the busiest time in the third year of high school, the seniors in the third year of high school, they were all top students, began to charge fees to help others complete their homework in order to save up for their tuition fees. They could even imitate people's handwriting to be exactly the same. This had already developed this industry to a commercial value. In Wang Ling's opinion, copying homework wasn't good, and was harmful to oneself. Helping someone else with their homework for a fee was even worse. It wasn't helping them, but harming them. Wang Ling had never felt that his homework was valuable, but it couldn't stop his homework from selling like hotcakes over at the Heavenly Tao. The equivalent exchange that the Heavenly Axiom had conducted over the past few years was not as valuable as his homework. Wang Ling noticed that from the moment he entered the Office of Strategic Deception's territory, he had been the focus of all kinds of staff members. After entering the internet cafe, Su Xing kept peeping at her. Actually, Wang Ling didn't really care. Too many things had happened in the first half of high school, which had actually made him feel a lot more at ease. He no longer felt uncomfortable all over when someone glanced at him for the slightest bit. Let them look. You're just looking because you're good looking. That's why they look at you. Thinking this way, Wang Ling felt a lot more at ease. Besides, he had used the great face-shaping spell to make slight adjustments to his appearance, and had deliberately made himself ugly. Actually, it wasn't all that good-looking. Even when Wang Ling himself looked in the mirror, he felt that his face was mediocre. Compared with those fresh meat on TV with fair and tender faces, high noses, straight eyebrows and oval faces, he was still a long way off. In terms of looks, Wang Ling felt that he couldn't compare to even a tenth or two of immortal Toya. He was just a high school student who was pleasing to the eye. But Wang Ling hadn't expected Feng Xing to actually be a little unhappy that Su Xing kept looking at him. In the Office of Strategic Deception, Feng Xing was now Su Xing's immediate superior. Thus, when Su Xing looked at Wang Ling out of the corner of his eye, he suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. It was as if he was looking at a cobra standing on its hind legs and staring at him, and cold sweat instantly broke out on his forehead. Su Xing had already heard that this Ling Zhenren was the Office of Strategic Deception's group favorite, and that everyone treasured him to no end. But this was a little too exquisite, and Wang Ling had only taken a few glances. As a newcomer, Su Xing naturally didn't dare offend his superior. He smiled foolishly and withdrew his gaze. Then, he brought them to a small room. This was the reception room in the game group's internet cafe. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had prepared the machines in advance, and there were exactly 5 game machines in holographic pods. The 3 friends from number 60 high were instantly pleasantly surprised. This? Feng Xing smiled. You're not old enough to go online in an internet cafe, but this is the reception room. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, chief of the Office of Strategic Deception, specially prepared these machines here and invited us to experience them. He sent me the physical verification, but didn't tell you before because he wanted to give you a surprise. Actually, this was a form of preferential treatment. Super Chen and Dopey Gua were extremely excited. They had never sat in such high-end game pods before, and it was actually unrealistic to buy one. It wasn't that they couldn't afford it. It was just that it was a little awkward at this stage in high school. It was inevitable that their parents would be angry with such a big machine at home. When all was said and done, the college entrance examination hadn't started yet, so it wasn't appropriate for them to engage in this kind of extreme entertainment. One by one, they sat down in the holographic game pods. The soft sofa and comfortable cushions made them feel as if they were in a land of gentleness. This was too comfortable. It was like cotton everywhere. After lying down, they felt as if they had sunk into water, and their bodies were as light as a feather. Even if they didn't play games, it was very comfortable to lie down here and sleep. Damn. I'm definitely going to buy one in my lifetime. I'll buy it once I get into university. I'll buy it even if I have to spend all my money. Super Chen was excited. Quit your games first. I reckon that you'll be able to save enough money for one by the time you get into university. Dopey chuckled. In fact, it wasn't impossible as long as they saved money on weapon enhancement scrolls. A top-of-the-line holographic pod wasn't expensive. It was only 1.6 million yuan. Little Peanut lay in the holographic pod and prayed. His family was a Buddhist, and he put his palms together in a Buddhist salute as if he were praying. My parents said that life would be easy after I get into university. Although he was lying in the pod now, Little Peanut still felt a little guilty, which was probably what all well-behaved children who were about to be led astray felt at this time. As the well-behaved child of the family and the class commissary in charge of studies, Little Peanut didn't even use a smartphone at home, let alone play games. It was only when Little Peanut's parents had seen Audiobook's invitation that they had agreed to let him go for a study assignment that they had agreed to let him go. Seeing that everyone was lying in the game pods, Su Xing smiled and said, "Everyone, get ready. Please lie down in your most comfortable positions, and I'll turn them on." He had an administrator remote control in his hand. After he pressed the button, the doors of the 5 holographic game pods closed. Whether it was Su Xing, Feng Xing or Wang Ling, none of them had expected this simple experience to actually cause trouble. Chapter 9:15. The moment the cabin door closed, something happened that Su Xing did not expect. The remote control for closing the cabin door was separate from the remote control for turning on the cabin door. Su Xing did not even press the turn-on button, but the holographic game cabin actually started on its own. Su Xing frowned. He subconsciously sensed that something wasn't right, so he immediately took out the 2 remote controls and pressed the off button. In the end, they all failed. Was there something wrong with the machines? Su Xing yelled. "Pull the switch." For a moment, all the lights in the internet cafe disappeared. Several confused customers came out of the virtual cabins to ask what was going on. "I was having fun. Why did the power go out? I'm only halfway through." "Holy shit. Brother, you're awesome. You're in an internet cafe, and you're using a game cabin." The customers on the side were astonished. That's right. The only koi in the cultivation world is so good. And the author is so handsome. He doesn't even ask for monthly votes during the new year. There's actually an author who doesn't ask for monthly votes nowadays. Maybe it's because there aren't enough updates, so he's too embarrassed to ask for them. By the way, brother, what were you doing just now? I was reading the chicken soup written by the famous chicken soup master, Teacher Mimi Meng Meng. Just as my soul was about to be healed, the power suddenly went out. Damn it! The current situation was that the internet cafe's power switch had already been completely pulled off. But Wang Ling and the other 4's machines were still running in front of Su Xing. Something had happened. Su Xing broke out in a cold sweat, but he didn't know who on earth the enemy in front of him was. Should I break it by force? Su Xing stared at the 5 machines in front of him. Then, he gritted his teeth and struck the game cabin with his palm. He couldn't care less now. Saving people was the most important thing. His palm hit the door of the game cabin with great precision. But the moment his palm touched the cabin door, Su Xing's expression changed dramatically, because there was actually an invisible barrier above the cabin door that the naked eye couldn't see through. When was it set up? Su Xing's expression changed dramatically. The game cabins had just arrived this morning, and they had already been turned on to ensure that there were no problems before they had been placed here until Ling Zhenren and his classmates arrived. During this time, no one had entered the room at all. Su Xing had been keeping watch outside the whole time, but hadn't noticed anyone suspicious. What he didn't expect was that the game capsule had been tampered with. However, before Su Xing figured out who did it, a powerful wave of spiritual energy came from the place where Su Xing had just punched the barrier. Damage backlash. Su Xing gritted his teeth and sent out another palm strike at the shockwave in an attempt to neutralize it. Su Xing's palm technique contained heavenly Tao, and its power was not weak. However, when his palm collided with the recoil of the psionic energy, Su Xing was thrown backward and vomited a large mouthful of blood. It was actually a backlash that doubled in power. Su Xing half knelt on the ground. His sternum had already been shattered, and even the walls of the room had collapsed. For a moment, the internet cafe became a mess. What's going on? Su Xing endured the pain and stood up. At that moment, he suddenly thought of someone. Miss Bai Qiao. The game pod in Miss Bai Qiao's office had also arrived in the morning. Given that the power switch had already been pulled, it was reasonable to say that Miss Bai Chao should have already jumped out of the game pod in a thunderous rage and started swearing. But Miss Bai Chao was nowhere to be seen. Had she been hit as well? Su Xing hurriedly notified Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. But to his surprise, as soon as he dialed the number, a space fisher appeared behind him. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and a very pretty person, who couldn't be sure whether it was a boy or a girl, walked out of the fissure. However, this person's aura was inhuman, and had a very strong demon aura. It was Shan Wuyue, who was still in his second personality Shen Eryu state. Still a step too late? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal frowned. Shen Eryu looked at the injured Su Xing and helped him up. He took off the OK bandage on his head where the antlers had been broken off. In his amazement, Su Xing saw an arc of blood spurt out from the broken part with a bayou sound. Shen Eryu took out a disposable plastic cup that he always carried with him and skillfully filled it with blood, then put the OK bandage back on. Su Xing. He gave the cup of blood to Su Xing and said in a voice as soft as the cool moon, "You're badly injured. If you don't want any side effects, drink this cup of blood." This was the person whom Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had brought along, and it was clear that both of them had expected this. Although this strange person had demon aura, Su Xing didn't mind and drank the cup of blood in one gulp. Dear Qilin blood had a strong restorative ability, and was even stronger than Little Silver's blood. After drinking the cup, Su Xing was pleasantly surprised to find that all the pain in his body had been swept away. His broken bones had healed, and even his complexion was a lot better than before. Let me introduce you. This is Lord Shan Wuyue, the Holy Master who works for Demon Saint in the demon world. Seeing that Su Xing had recovered, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal introduced him. Holy Master of the demon world. The corners of Su Xing's mouth twitched. He felt that he had underestimated the Office of Strategic Deception. It was actually connected to the top dog of the demon world. Suppressing his shock, Su Xing asked, "Senior Immortal, what on earth is going on?" The Holy Palace in the demon world detected fluctuations from outside the domain of the gods, and captured a three-headed phoenix from outside the domain of the gods, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal replied. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal replied, "The extinct three-headed phoenix was raised in captivity in the domain of the gods. Puppet strings were planted on its body, and it launched an attack on the demon realm Holy Palace. In the end, it was suppressed and captured by Lord Shen Wuyue." Outer Divine Territory. Su Xing felt as if his worldview had been refreshed. In the past 2 days, Su Xing's understanding of the cultivation world was constantly being refreshed. He had previously thought that the 10 generals were already the symbol of the top big shots in the cultivation circle, but now he discovered that he was a frog at the bottom of a well. As he spoke, Shen Eryu inspected the barrier of the lower stage and then frowned deeply. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. "How is it?" Shen Eryu said, "This barrier is a power I've never seen before. It's not within the scope of my ability, but I can be sure that it's neither the heavenly Tao nor the heretic Tao. It should be a power that surpasses the other two. You should be able to sense it, right? You also possess the power of the heavenly Tao." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's expression was grave as he nodded. "This indeed isn't heavenly Tao. Our opponent's realms are not on the same level as ours." Shen Eryu sighed. "So, there's nothing we can do? We can only believe in Lord Ling's power. Apart from that, maybe we can ask Mr. Wang Zhan and the others for help. They're from the domain of the gods, and might have some understanding of this power," Shen Eryu said. Also, Chapter 9:16. What else? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked hurriedly. It was shameful to break a chapter. But if the author was very handsome, he believed that the readers would forgive him. "I heard Senior Immortal mention that a Keeper of Order traveled through time and space to visit this place incognito?" Shen Eryu said calmly. "Brother Gu Xuanji." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal patted his head. When he was anxious, he tended to forget things, and he had actually almost forgotten about this senior. He really shouldn't have done that. This was someone who maintained the order of the universe, and was also a figure appointed by the heavenly Tao. A Keeper of Order would indeed know more about such an inexplicable situation than an ordinary cultivator. But for some reason, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal felt a little uneasy. His eyebrows were tightly furrowed, and he had a bad feeling. After stepping into the unique realm of True Venerated, his comprehension of the heavenly Tao had reached a new level. The game pod in front of him was covered in a special power that made him uneasy. A power that had nothing to do with the heavenly Tao at all. What on earth was this? Senior Gu, let me contact him. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal dialed Gu Xuanji's number. After fighting Wang Ling, Gu Xuanji had wholeheartedly accepted Wang Ling's strength. He had always wanted Wang Ling's number, and in the end, it was Lord Ma who had given it to him. In the end, when Gu Xuanji called back, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal intercepted him. This was one of Wang Ling's group pet treatments. The Office of Strategic Deception would automatically be on guard against calls from strangers to protect Wang Ling's ears and world peace in passing. This month, the Office of Strategic Deception had already taken down a number of illegal small loan institutions and arrested more than 1,000 SMS scammers. Many of these scammers had been sending text messages at the same company, and had been uprooted on the spot when they were found. In addition, the Office of Strategic Deception had also caught a number of special scammers who sought connections with the rich, and had arrested tens of thousands of first emperors of Qin. After interrogation, there was still one who refused to admit defeat and insisted that he was the reincarnation of first emperor Qin. After dialing Gu Xuanji's number, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal waited for a moment. On the other end of the line, Gu Xuanji's voice didn't come through. After a few seconds, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal suddenly heard an ear-piercing sound on the phone. Watch out! In the nick of time, Shen Eriyu abruptly reached out to slap Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's phone away, and kicked it out of the internet cafe. Boom! There was a loud noise. The phone exploded on the spot, forming a huge mushroom cloud outside the internet cafe. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's heart was in turmoil, and the expression on his face didn't calm down for a very long time. Everything was too horrifying. If it wasn't for Shen Wuyue, if the phone had exploded next to his ear, he would have been severely injured even though he wouldn't have died due to his current realm. It was a surprise bomb attack. Fortunately, Shen Wuyue reacted quickly. As a legendary divine beast, Lu Lin's ability to sense danger was indeed extraordinary. Was this a warning? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sank into silence for a very long time. The opponents they faced this time were different from the ones they faced in the past. There were no clues at all. They did not make any preparations. In fact, he didn't even have the time to defend himself. The other party's attacks were like a manipulator behind the scenes in a game, manipulating everything as he pleased. What kind of enemy was this? They had no idea. How is it? Did the call go through? Shen Wuyue asked. This is a warning. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal frowned deeply. I'm afraid Senior Gu is also in trouble. As it turned out, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's hunch was correct. On the other side, Gu Xuanji was indeed in unprecedented trouble. Before the game cabin's special energy had covered him, Gu Xuanji, who had been probing the flow of spatial spirit power far away in the outer city, had sensed it. Gu Xuanji sensed for a moment on the spot, but couldn't figure out the source of this special energy. What on earth is this? Gu Xuanji couldn't help muttering. Then he closed his eyes and connected his consciousness with the heavenly Tao space. Now that he had run into trouble, he could only ask the heavenly Tao Little Golden Man to see if the six great heavenly Tao knew the source of this special energy. Gu Xuanji landed in the office of the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee. It seemed that the six great heavenly Tao had already anticipated his arrival. You're here, Strength Heavenly Tao said faintly. Although he couldn't see Strength Heavenly Tao's expression clearly, this voice was clearly different from usual, and sounded a little heavy. What on earth happened? As the Keeper of Order, Gu Xuanji asked. He had a vague bad feeling about this. He was appointed by the domain of the gods as the Keeper of Space Order, and yet he had no idea that something like this had happened. What a joke. Except for Strength Heavenly Tao, the other heavenly Tao were silent. This made Gu Xuanji even more nervous. This was an unprecedented situation. After a long silence, Strength Heavenly Tao said, "Beyond the domain of the gods." Beyond the domain of the gods? Gu Xuanji was dumbfounded. His expression was the same as Grenade-throwing Senior Immortals when he had heard this term. You're the Keeper of Order, but there are also places that a Keeper of Order can't oversee, Strength Heavenly Tao murmured in a gloomy tone. Strength Heavenly Tao murmured in a dejected tone, The universe we live in has no end. The primogenitor of heavenly Tao once said that the essence of the universe is a nesting doll. One layer on top of the other. There's always a higher mountain. This was the first time Gu Xuanji, who had traveled the universe for so long, had heard of this saying. His eyes were full of shock. You see the boulder, but not the mountain behind it. You see the river, but not the sea. Strength Heavenly Tao sighed. All the Heavenly Tao were silent, and the entire Heavenly Tao governing committee was lifeless, as if the end of the world had come. Ling Zhenren might have a way. Gu Xuanji's voice echoed in the space. Ever since his last fight with Wang Ling, he had become Wang Ling's fanboy. Gu Xuanji could vaguely guess Wang Ling's identity, but he didn't dare confirm it. In terms of strength, Gu Xuanji had to admit that they weren't on the same level. There was at least an entire dimension gap between him and Wang Ling. This was already something that couldn't be measured by the difference in realms. It's too late, he's already been sucked in. At that moment, Strength Heavenly Tao raised his hand and waved it to project an image in the air. It was the scene of Wang Ling and the others being forcibly sealed in the game pods. Gu Xuanji, how can this be? Strength Heavenly Tao. In another hour at most, the spirit qi in this world will be completely enveloped by this special energy. We don't know if we can survive this. The more Gu Xuanji thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. But I'm from the future. Strength Heavenly Tao. Haven't you noticed? Gu Xuanji. Strength Heavenly Tao. Your body is gradually disappearing. Gu Xuanji said. No, I'm fine. Strength Heavenly Tao. The disappearance usually starts from the location where the yang qi is stored. Gu Xuanji unbuckled his belt and looked at his crotch. No, it's still there. Strength Heavenly Tao. I'm talking about the golden core in the Dantian. Look at your own golden core. Are you still there? Gu Xuanji. Elsewhere, Wang Ling and the others had arrived in a completely unfamiliar city. They landed on the top of a mountain. Looking into the distance, they could see the brightly lit city in the distance. This wasn't Earth. There wasn't even a trace of spiritual energy. I can't cast spells anymore? Wang Ling used several rounds of ordinary spells in a row, but realized that he couldn't use them at all. There was no spirit qi in this world, and no spirit qi meant no spiritual power. Without spiritual power, spells could not be performed. Currently, the only spells Wang Ling could use were Heavenly Tao spells. The Heavenly Tao spells were powered purely by primordial qi. Furthermore, Wang Ling's situation was a little special. This primordial qi had been born naturally since he was a child, and could be produced in his body. Because he couldn't suppress this primordial qi, Wang Ling had drawn a talisman seal on himself not long after he was born. Wang Ling never thought that this primordial qi would actually come in handy here. On the cliff, Wang Ling felt the cold wind. Fang Xing, Super Chen, Hero Gua and Little Peanut were still unconscious. The moment the door to the game cabin had closed, they had instantly fallen in here. It was clear that this wasn't a game. Instead, it was a trap. They had been forced into another world. Hey, there's no point in standing here. Why don't we go investigate the situation? A familiar voice rang out, and someone appeared behind Wang Ling. It was Bai Qiao. Wang Ling knew that Bai Qiao had also come here. He had sensed her aura the moment they had landed. I went ahead to investigate just now. The people here are all strange-looking, like an alien planet. Bai Qiao pursed her lips. It was clear that she also knew that this wasn't a game. She pressed down on the brim of her hat and crossed her arms. There was a hint of anger in her voice. I was halfway through my game when I suddenly fell here with you. If I find out who did this, I'll cut him into pieces. Wang Ling replied indifferently. He sat down cross-legged, then finally plucked one of his king's eyes out of its socket and tossed it into the sky. Wang Ling could vaguely sense a conspiracy here. It had happened so suddenly that he hadn't even sensed anything. Not even his eyelids had been alerted. Even his prophetic dreams hadn't happened before such a major event had taken place. This was enough to prove how strong his opponent was. At that moment, he had tossed out the king's eye in order to clearly see this world in its entirety. As Bai Qiao had said, this was a planet tens of thousands of times larger than Earth, and its inhabitants were all strange creatures. There were octopuses that looked like briquettes that sprayed transparent ink as they walked on the streets, cleaning up the streets like a sprinkler. There were creatures with jelly-like bodies that were soft as if they didn't have any bones. They walked on the streets with their pitch-black eyes wide open. There were also monsters with 2 legs that were almost humanoid. There were all kinds of monsters that looked like demons but weren't and devils but weren't. But they had neither demon chi nor devil chi. This world doesn't have any spirit energy, but it has its own set of nomological laws. The energy these monsters use is also different from ours. At that moment, Feng Xing had also woken up. "You're actually awake?" Bai Qiao was a little surprised. "I have a white transformation spell that doesn't require any spirit energy to activate. I went to check out the situation in the city just now," said Feng Xing, "but the monsters here speak another language that I don't understand." Finally, the whole world doesn't speak Mandarin? Bai Qiao sneered, then stared at Super Chen and the others who were still lying on the ground and asked, "What about these people? It won't be easy to do things with these 3 burdens." "It's too much to say that they're burdens. These 3 are naturally useful." Feng Xing patted Super Chen's face and woke him up first. Super Chen felt that he had slept for a very long time. Rubbing his eyes, he opened them blearily. He turned pale with fright at the scene in front of him. "Holy shit! Where am I?" "You've already entered a game world, a game called Sim City. But since this is your first time connecting to the virtual game pod, your mind is a little unstable, which is normal." Feng Xing smiled and made up a lie with a straight face. "Is that so? Why do I feel like you're lying to me? Don't tell me we've all fallen into another world?" Super Chen rubbed his face to make himself more awake. Wang Ling, Feng Xing and Bai Qiao. At that moment, Super Chen noticed Bai Qiao on the side. "Who is this girl?" "She's the boss of the Office of Strategic Deception's Internet Cafe. Her surname is Bai," Feng Xing said. "Hello, Miss Bai." Super Chen was a little embarrassed and blushed. "This is the first time I've seen a girl prettier than classmate Lotus Sun. It feels a little unreal. Miss Bai feels like a fairy from a painting, not a human." Bai Qiao pressed down on Feng Xing's shoulder with a resigned expression. "I take back what I said just now." Feng Xing smiled back. "You'll get used to it." "Then what's going on with us?" Super Chen looked around, a little puzzled. "This game is a little special. You can't use spirit energy. Furthermore, the boss is hidden, and the clues are in the city up ahead." Standing on the cliff and looking at the city up ahead, Feng Xing said, "The game is set in an alien city, but it's a little unfortunate that it hasn't been completely Chinese, and the monsters all speak in an alien language." Super Chen rubbed his chin and nodded. "Is there a time limit for clearing the game?" 24 hours, Feng Xing replied, although he knew it wasn't good to lie to them with such a straight face. But there was nothing he could do now. He had to calm the 3 of them down. Sometimes, white lies were necessary. After all, Super Chen, Hero Gua and Little Peanut were just high school students. If they knew the truth, they might not be able to withstand the pressure. This wasn't a game. They had fallen into an alien planet and another world. Furthermore, the person who had summoned them was still observing them in the dark. If they didn't handle it well, they might die. "No props?" Super Chen asked after thinking for a bit. "No." Feng Xing shook his head. "Then I think I know how to clear the game," Super Chen said. "Have you played GTA 48 before?" Feng Xing, "Yes, Super Chen. This game should be about the same as Crime City. Once we enter the city, we just need to cause a ruckus. In any case, we won't die, right? When we're done, we'll trigger the main plot and side plot, and we'll follow the clues to find the boss. Even if the boss is hiding, we won't be able to ignore it." "No, we won't die. I'm relieved to hear that." Feng Xing nodded with a smile, his face full of gratitude. Wang Ling and Bai Qiao. Chapter 9:17. Bai Qiao suddenly realized that she was still a little too young. She had thought that she had already read the script, but compared with Super Chen, she felt that Super Chen was the one who had truly read the script. And she had only read the title page. When Hero Gua and Su Xiao woke up, Super Chen recounted the current situation to them. Games were the products that students were most willing to spend time, effort, and even money to achieve transcendence for their souls. Regardless of whether it was an online game or a single-player game, being able to become the #1 player in a game was always the fun part. This game is so developed. It doesn't even give us a 98k when we land, and we have to rely on ourselves to discover the plot? Dopey slapped his thigh. That's a little interesting. Super Chen analyzed the current situation. At the moment, we don't know the main plot, we don't have any supplies, and we don't even know the game language. I think that if we want to clear the game, we should be given language clearance at the very beginning. If we're speaking an alternate world's language, how are we going to clear the game? Language. Little Peanut muttered to himself. Then what should we do now? Let's go into the city and take a look. Maybe we can find the Easter egg that Dopey's uncle buried in the game, said Super Chen. Wang Ling was startled. An uncle? Wang Ling, you don't play games with us very much. Of course you don't know about this. Super Chen laughed. Dopey has an uncle who does game programming. His uncle will secretly plant Easter eggs in all the games we play. Basically, all the games we play have Easter eggs in them. Wang Ling usually didn't believe in metaphysics, but Super Chen's blessed mouth had been proven countless times. Wang Ling withdrew his king's eye and got a general idea of the structure of this planet. This was a planet with only one city, and it wasn't hard to find the person at the helm. His portrait was publicly projected on almost all the conspicuous tall buildings. Contrary to Wang Ling's expectations, the person at the helm of this monster-filled planet was actually a humanoid creature, because he wasn't sure if the other party was human. Hey, are you really going to choose me as captain? Super Chen's face was full of question marks. Yes, you. Don't refuse. Feng Xing smiled. To be honest, Feng Xing had never felt this way before. He had never thought that there would actually be a day when he would feel a trace of peace in someone other than Wang Ling. Since the Heavenly Dao technique could be activated normally, it was easier for a group of people to sneak into the city than expected. Using the Great Transfiguration spell, Wang Ling changed everyone's appearance to that of the many monsters in the city. Super Chen turned into a muscular red giant with demon king horns on his head, looking very domineering. Herogua's illusory form was a big multicolored rooster. Wang Ling had designed this appearance based on the Furious Chicken's appearance, which he had been following for a while in the web series Furious Chicken Xiangxi. Little Peanut's illusory form was a gourd man who looked like a peanut and carried 2 daggers on his back. Of course, this dagger was fake and could not be used normally. Feng Xing's illusory form was a tyrant flower, which Wang Ling had seen in the Encyclopedia of Plants. It was a hermaphrodite. Wang Ling's form was very simple. He turned himself into a raccoon. As for Bai Qiao, she hadn't transformed. She retracted her feet and became a specter. As a weapon spirit. This was the advantage of being able to Photoshop 2 feet off at any time. Number 60 High School's monster squad entered the city. The monster guards were lizard soldiers, but none of them noticed anything unusual. Because of the language barrier, after observing the streets for a while, Super Chen led everyone to the entrance of a bar. Super Chen couldn't read the words here, but he could recognize the bottles in the bar. Generally speaking, in this type of free game, there's usually a plot to trigger in a brothel. Super Chen explained to everyone at the entrance of the bar. Feng Xing nodded. Of course he believed what Super Chen said. If Super Chen said there definitely was. In an unfamiliar place and with a language barrier, everything seemed to come to a standstill. When everyone entered the bar, they realized that the bartender at the front desk was actually also a lizard. Another lizard man? Wang Ling and Feng Xing looked at each other. Although there were all kinds of strange monsters in the city, the lizard men occupied the main positions in the city, including the lizard soldiers who guarded the city and the lizard guards who patrolled the streets. But these lizard men didn't have the aura of the demon Dao at all. They were completely different from the lizard men they had seen in the demon world. Ding! The bar's doorbell rang. In an instant, the gazes of all the monsters in the bar converged on Wang Ling and the others. Wang Ling spread out his golden light shield to protect everyone. Although Super Chen could feel the pressure, Wang Ling was shouldering most of the spiritual pressure. Super Chen and Hirogua couldn't help sighing at the realism of this game. It actually had a pressure-sensing mechanism. This game was too strong. Although they couldn't afford to buy a virtual game pod, they still had some understanding of the games in it. They knew about the virtual game pods that were publicly sold on the market, and there were only a few of them. Furthermore, according to the official evaluation results, they were all lacking in realism. They could actually feel spiritual pressure in this game. It was really amazing. You're the NPC, right? Super Chen wasn't afraid, and directly walked up to the lizard bartender and pinched his nose. The lizard bartender frowned. Super Chen. Oh my god! Hero Gua, look! This NPC actually has an expression. It's actually angry? This game's algorithm is really amazing. Wang Ling, Feng Xing and Bai Qiao. Then, Super Chen picked up a bottle that another monster had been drinking from, and smashed it down on the lizard bartender's head with a paw sound. The lizard bartender was furious, and his face instantly turned red. Super Chen. Oh my god! Everyone, look! This lizard bartender can actually get angry. The NPCs in this game are too realistic. The lizard bartender cursed loudly. Although he couldn't understand what the other party was saying at all, everyone in the universe cursed in the same way. Qi sank into the dantian, saliva sprayed everywhere, and the sound was as loud as firecrackers on New Year's Eve. Seeing Super Chen's cheeky expression, the lizard bartender directly took out a gun and aimed it at him. Ha ha ha! This lizard even took out a gun. But can it really hit me? As he joked, Super Chen grinned and stretched out his hand to directly snatch the lizard bartender's gun back. Wang Ling, Feng Xing and Bai Qiao. Then Super Chen aimed the gun at the lizard bartender's head. You're an NPC, so be it. If I want to hit you, I'll hit you. Bang! A laser beam shot out from the gun and pierced the lizard bartender's head. The lizard bartender collapsed in a pool of blood. Super Chen was startled again. Holy shit! The blood in this game is actually red. Wang Ling, Feng Xing and Bai Qiao. Chapter 9:18. The bar was in chaos as many of the monsters were scared off. They had never seen such fiendish monsters before. Who on earth was that red giant with Demon King horns? He actually dared to cause trouble so openly and even killed the bartender. The monsters were stupefied. Some of them lay on the ground with their hands over their heads, while others simply ran for their lives out of the bar, howling as they ran, and the ear-piercing sound shook everyone's eardrums. This game's sound simulation mechanism is also very realistic. There's even a long-range reaction. Looking at the monsters running away, Super Chen couldn't help sighing. Ouch! At that moment, Super Chen suddenly cried out in pain. He had been hit in the back by a laser beam. But because of the protective spirit light, the laser beam hadn't pierced Super Chen's armor, and the pain was almost negligible. It was like being flicked on the skull. Super Chen turned around and grabbed the lizard man waiter who had been lying on the ground, shooting at him with an extremely excited expression on his face. Ha ha ha! The NPCs here actually know how to fight back. As expected, it's very similar to Vice City. The lizard man waiter had a terrified expression on his face. Hero Gua and Little Peanut moved closer and were full of praise when they saw it. Hero Gua sighed. This game must have cost a lot of money. Look at this little thing. Even the terrified expression is very well done. I'm afraid it's watched self-cultivation as an actor. Just as Super Chen aimed his gun at the lizard man waiter, police sirens sounded outside the bar, which delighted Super Chen. Don't worry everyone, we've already triggered the plot. At a time like this, someone will definitely appear to guide us away from the guards. As soon as he said this, a large hole suddenly appeared in the ceiling, and a man in a black cloak fell from it. Look! What did I say? Super Chen laughed loudly. Wang Ling, Feng Xing and White Pigeon. What are you waiting for? Let's go. The cloaked man's face was covered by a clown mask. The moment he landed, he spread his arms and opened up a dazzling purple space tunnel. But this wasn't a spell. Wang Ling noticed the ring on the cloaked man's finger. This space tunnel had been created purely from the power accumulated in the ring. It was an unknown energy that was neither spiritual qi nor primordial qi. But what exactly was this? What was this planet full of monsters? The answers to all these questions would be revealed soon. Before the large group of lizard men guards riding wyverns with warning lights on their heads arrived at the bar, Wang Ling and the others arrived at a mysterious base with the help of a cloaked man who had suddenly appeared. They were underground. He had already used the King's Eye to scan an entire planet, so he would know his position no matter where he was. After so many years, someone has finally come. The man took off his mask and untied his black cloak. He was a resolute middle-aged man with a short beard and a triangular mole at the corner of his eye. After taking off the black cloak, the man was wearing a white tracksuit and black track pants underneath, and a medal on the right side of his chest caught Wang Ling's attention. This was a medal from Wuxia Nation's Cultivation and Magic Treasure Research Institute. His dumbass brother Wang Ming also had one. It wasn't just Wang Ling. The rest of the people here also noticed this familiar symbol. Many of the commercial magic treasures produced by manufacturers on the market were patented by the Magic Treasure Research Institute. So it wasn't strange for students to be familiar with this symbol. Look, Wang Ling. What did I say, didn't we trigger the plot? Super Chen covered his mouth as he elbowed Wang Ling next to him. Wang Ling. Who are you? Feng Xing stared at the man in front of him. Just like you, I'm from Wuxia Nation. My name is Guoping. Saying this, the man raised his head. Then, he turned his gaze to Dopey Gua. And this is my nephew. Everyone. Hero Gua's mouth fell open. He never expected his omnipotent uncle to actually plant an Easter egg in this virtual game. Guoping. Although you're not my nephew, your father is a distant big brother of mine. Hero Gua instantly got into character. Hello, uncle. What on earth is going on? Feng Xing asked. You're now on a planet called Divine Dao Star in the domain of the gods. Guoping frowned, as if recalling something from a long time ago. He turned on his wristwatch, and a data wave chart was instantly projected in the air. After pondering for a moment, Guoping turned to everyone and said, About 6 years ago, when the gate between worlds descended, we detected a trace of special energy mixed in with the energy fluctuations of the demon realm that we had never seen before. This unusual energy is stronger than spirit qi. Considering that Earth's spirit qi is currently drying up, we started to investigate the source of this unusual energy. Guoping then turned his wristwatch, and the image projected in the air changed to a map of the universe. This is our location, Earth. Guoping pointed to a blue planet the size of an ink dot on the map. He then looked elsewhere. I've circled this area in the middle with a red circle, which we call the center of the domain. The orange circle beyond that is the Milky Way, which is the legendary domain of the gods. Domain of the gods. The people from number 60 high school raised their eyebrows. They had heard this term in textbooks before. Rumor had it that it was the place where almighties gathered after transcending and attaining Tao. The domain of the gods does exist. Guoping was very serious and serious. But Super Chen and the others couldn't help snickering. In their eyes, this was just a game program setting, and they felt that the script was quite plausible. Although they had heard rumors of the domain of the gods in textbooks, their teachers had said that this kind of place didn't exist at all. How strong were the 10 generals? How strong was the head of state? Even such strong people like them hadn't ascended yet. But while they thought this, Super Chen and the others didn't interrupt. They knew that the game plot had already unfolded, and they couldn't interrupt the NPC at this time. They had to listen quietly to find clues to clear the game. Looking at the map, Guoping continued. What you're looking at now is the domain of the gods outside the orange circle, which is also where Divine Dao Star is located. In the end, we determined that the source of this special energy is in the domain of the gods, which is 30 million light-years away from Earth. Thus, 6 years ago, I was assigned by the Research Institute to take the small spaceship Godming 1 to search for clues to this special energy. 30 million light-years. How can we solve the problem of the spaceship's energy source? With our country's latest scientific methods, it only takes an hour to fly 10,000 light-years at full speed. But the problem we can't solve is the continuous consumption of energy. We don't have enough fuel to fly such a long distance, Guoping said. Then, later, academician Wang Ming found a solution. Saying this, Guoping switched the image projected in the air. The black lines in the image that look like strands of hair are energy lines made up of highly dense spirit power. These energy lines can sustain energy consumption for a distance of 1,000,000 light-years. I don't know how academician Wang Ming developed this thing. I still have a pile of it in my hands. Because the equipment in the lab is a local product, it isn't compatible with the special energy on Divine Dao Star, so the energy in the lab is currently provided by this strand of hair. When it's almost finished, I'll replace it with another strand. The corner of Wang Ling's mouth twitched. How was this a black line that looked like a strand of hair? This was a F***** king strand of hair. Because this strand of hair was his. Chapter 9:19. When Guoping said this, Wang Ling suddenly remembered that there had been a time 6 years ago when Wang Ming had come to the villa very frequently, and would always go to the toilet when he had nothing to do. Looking at it now, it was very likely that Wang Ming had gone to the toilet to collect his hair. Wang Ling had the habit of washing his hair every day. In addition to showering every night, he would wash his hair in the sink in the morning. If he washed his hair so diligently, there would always be 1 or 2 strands of hair that would fall out. Hearing Guoping suddenly mention this, Wang Ling finally knew why his dumbass brother had hidden his impure motives back then. Actually, a long time ago, Wang Ling had felt that Wang Ming had been a little sneaky. He had thought that Wang Ming was coveting his crispy noodle snacks. But every time Wang Ming found an excuse to go to the toilet in his room, the number of crispy noodle snacks he had didn't decrease. As time went by, Wang Ling stopped suspecting him. Who knew that this dumbass brother of his would actually target his washed hair? Wang Ling couldn't imagine how wretched this guy's expression would be when he bent over and scooped hair out of the drain with a wire hook. The truth was that Wang Ling also didn't know that the extra hair back then had actually been made into a figurine by Wang Ming, which was locked in a safe in the research room. This was Wang Ling's version of the Barbie doll, which Wang Ming had carefully selected and collected back then. If this Barbie doll was used as a power source, it would at least be able to maintain an energy consumption of hundreds of millions of light-years in space. Then, did you summon us here? I don't have the ability. This is Star-Lord's trick. His plan is to confine the strongest person on Earth on Divine Tao Star, and then launch the Earth-devouring plan. Saying this, Guoping swept his gaze over the crowd. He knew that the legendary strongest person on Earth was among them, and that the rest had been dragged in because they had been implicated. Sure enough, it's because of me again. Wang Ling sighed. While he was pondering this, Wang Ling saw Guoping's gaze turn to Bai Qiao. Miss, you're the legendary strongest person on Earth, right? Bai Qiao swept a glance at Wang Ling next to her out of the corner of her eye, thought for a bit, and then nodded. It's me. She didn't directly expose him, not because she was afraid of his strength. Miss Bai Qiao was different from those coquettish B***cheese who followed their hearts in the past. In contrast, Bai Qiao was more realistic. What she had thought just now was that Wang Ling was her boss, so there was no harm in taking the blame. So, what on earth is this plan to devour the Earth? Bai Qiao asked with her arms crossed. I'll have to start with the origin of Divine Tao Star. Including the time I spent drifting in space, it took me nearly a year to get to Divine Tao Star, and another year to basically understand the Divine Tao language used on this planet. Guoping composed himself and said, I define the special energy used on Divine Tao Star as godly power. This was a special energy source that relied on devouring other energy sources to strengthen itself. Over the years, Divine Tao Star's Star-Lord has relied on his own power to devour many planets that contain life, and devour all the independent energy sources on their planets to strengthen himself. He wants to raise Divine Tao Star to the top of the universe, and this time, Star-Lord's latest target is Earth. Ball battle? Super Chen suddenly thought of a mobile game. You can think of it that way, said Guoping, who also knew of this game. Back then, when he had drifted in space and arrived on Divine Tao Star, he had fallen into a dead end because of the language barrier. Although a lot of people thought he was already dead. But while Guoping hadn't been on Earth all these years, he had kept abreast of the latest news and technological information on Earth through the lab's terminal data. A person living alone on an alien planet had to be careful in every aspect. A brand new civilization, a brand new language, and a brand new set of rules of life. For Guoping, who was an outsider from Earth, this was simply like being imprisoned. If a person who had been in prison for a long time didn't understand the situation in the outside world in time, and couldn't integrate into life after returning, they would go crazy. Mississippi at that moment, Guoping turned to look at Bai Qiao. Currently, the only way to save Earth is to negotiate with Star-Lord. We don't have much time left. What do you mean? Divine Tao Star is so far away from Earth, and it's so huge. Even if it wants to devour Earth, it probably won't be that easy, asked Fengxing. No. Divine Tao Star's clone is now in Earth's core. What? An effect similar to magnets attracting each other. Guoping said, Divine Tao Star's clone will resonate remotely with the godly power of the main star. Based on current calculations, as long as half of the main star's godly power is drawn out, Divine Tao Star's clone will be able to swallow Earth inch by inch from the inside. Then how do you want to negotiate? Cede land and pay reparations? Or is there any other way? Bai Chao said, "Oh, that's right, my surname is Bai, I'm Bai Chao." "There is." Guo Ping said, "I currently have two solutions. First, calculate the conversion formula between godly power and spirit power, and then use our special equipment to convert spirit power into spirit qi. In this way, we can replenish Earth spirit qi, and also solve the problem of a lack of spirit qi in the future. But there are 3 difficulties with this plan. I'm guessing that I've only calculated 1/10 of the formula. And the equipment is still on Earth. Second, negotiate with Star-Lord, cede land and pay reparations, and try to peacefully coexist between our 2 stars. But I can't make the decision on ceding land and paying reparations. And this Star-Lord won't be willing to negotiate with an ant like me. But if Miss Bai steps in, there might be a chance of survival. Only these 2 methods. Only these 2. Guo Ping sighed. I've witnessed Star-Lord's strength with my own eyes. He's not in the same dimension as people on Earth or in the domain of the gods. We're just ants to Star-Lord. Not necessarily, there might be a third way. At that moment, Feng Xing and Bai Chao both raised their heads and said in unison. A third way? What way? Guo Ping was blank for a moment. Blow him up. At that moment, a voice rang out in Guo Ping's mind. He saw that teenager with dead fish eyes, who had been standing at the back of the crowd the whole time, raise his head to look at him. Blow up Star-Lord. Is this young man talking to me? Chapter 9:20. Blow up Star-Lord. These incomparably domineering words lingered in Guo Ping's mind. This was indeed a special plan that Guo Ping couldn't imagine. But how could it be easy to beat Star-Lord? Let alone blow him up. Was this really possible? Guo Ping couldn't imagine it. Although he hadn't been on Divine Dao Star for long, he had personally witnessed Star-Lord's brutality. This was a tyrant comparable to the god of destruction. As long as this tyrant set his sights on you, it was all over. Star-Lord has done a lot of inhumane things to expand Divine Dao Star all these years. Every time he thought of this, Guo Ping couldn't help trembling. Most of the information was obtained from the alien news. Translating the alien language into the human language was an extremely long translation process. Guo Ping had felt the fear that came from the depths of his soul countless times during the translation. Every time he completed the expansion of the planet, this Star-Lord of Divine Dao Star would announce it to the world with a proud and arrogant expression on his face. He was swearing an oath to everyone. He was the god of the universe. An omnipotent expert. Guo Ping's body trembled. Wang Ling could clearly sense that Guo Ping's eyes had lost all color in that instant. Futile resistance. When he said these words, there didn't seem to be any trace of bravery in them, and he knelt on the ground as if all his anger had been vented. Star-Lord of Divine Dao Star has never failed in capturing planets. Even those who struggled to escape were swallowed up one by one. Guo Ping said gloomily, I once saw the destruction of an alien civilization with my own eyes. It was a population of more than 20 billion. In order to escape Divine Dao Star's pursuit, 20 billion people worked together to stop the planet from spinning. They also installed hundreds of thousands of thrusters on the side of the planet, so that it could escape Divine Dao Star's pursuit. Speaking up to this point, Guo Ping smiled bitterly. So, even if you can stop Divine Dao Star's clone from expanding in the Earth's core, I'm afraid you won't be able to escape forever. If Star-Lord's plan fails, he'll directly fly Divine Dao Star over and swallow up the entire solar system. Even if Earth has the Wandering Earth plan. With Lu Zixin's imagination, Wu Jing won't be able to escape. Everyone. After being trapped on Divine Dao Star for so many years, Guo Ping's last bit of patience was about to run out. When he saw Wang Ling and the others in the tavern, who also spoke Mandarin, he felt like he was grasping at straws of life. Previously, he had intercepted a secret report which indicated that Star-Lord would capture the strongest person on Earth and imprison him here. Guo Ping had already made preparations early on. He brought Wang Ling and the others into his base, and the moment Wang Ling turned off the illusion, Guo Ping saw Dopey Gua. Although this was only a distant nephew of his, Guo Ping still began to miss the feeling of home. He began to yearn for the smell of his wife and children. Guo Ping wanted to let go of everything. He didn't want anything. He just wanted to be able to go back. Even if Earth was cut off and enslaved, it had nothing to do with him. Even if he died, he wanted to see his wife and children at the last moment. Super Chen, Hero Gua and Little Peanut were stupefied. They were stunned by the multifaceted sensibility of this NPC in the game. How could an NPC in a game be so immersive? They whispered to each other in low voices. Super Chen, Dopey, the Easter egg your uncle planted, was too good. It sounded like it was real, but I'm afraid it wasn't. I almost thought it wasn't a game anymore. Little Peanut, do you really have an uncle who works at the Research Institute? Hero Gua nodded. Indeed. My dad told me before that I have a distant uncle who does scientific research. This is probably an adaptation of the story of the uncle who works at the Research Institute by my gaming uncle. The script sounds very realistic. Wang Ling. For a very long time the base was silent. Super Chen nudged Feng Xing and said in a low voice, "Don't just stand there. The NPC is feeling very desperate now. At a time like this, we should say something encouraging. That's the best way to advance the game plot. Don't be fooled by his look of despair and helplessness. In fact, he's just like a person who sends a text message to his friends and relatives before jumping off a building. They lack care and care. Usually, as long as they feel warmth, they'll quickly recover." Feng Xing stepped forward and patted Guoping on the shoulder. "Don't give up, we still have hope." Guoping's lifeless face instantly glowed with new light. "Really? F***me. You wrote this game script, didn't you?" Hero Gua couldn't help exclaiming. "Everyone. In any case, it's better to give it a try than to sit and wait for death." Bai Chao said, "Know thyself and know thy enemy, and you will emerge victorious in every battle. Tell us as much as you can about Star-Lord. This lady's fur has been itching recently." As soon as she said this, everyone looked at Bai Chao strangely. Seeming to realize that her words just now were ambiguous, Bai Chao blushed and hurriedly corrected herself. "You perverts! I was talking about a hogue. What were you thinking?" Everyone, as if sensing the awkwardness of the atmosphere, Guoping coughed softly and said, "Everyone should have seen that a large portion of Divine Dao Star's lizard men are lizard men. But the truth is that this group of people aren't lizard men, but the legendary dragon people. On Divine Dao Star, they are also known as the Divine Dragons. This planet is ruled by the Divine Dragons. Star-Lord looks like a human, but that's only in human form. He's essentially a divine dragon." "Why does he look like a human?" Hero Gua asked. "This is actually why I advocated peace talks before. Because this Star-Lord actually likes Earth very much, and even admires humans. That's why he turned himself into a human. Currently, there are a lot of plastic surgery parlors on Divine Dao Star that have launched facial plastic surgery programs, and internet celebrity faces are very popular here. Since he likes Earth, why did he do this? Wouldn't it be better to leave Earth alone? Do you know why there are so many strange monsters on Divine Dao Star?" Guoping said, "Each monster represents an alien civilization. In this universe, there are strange creatures called sick people. They think differently from normal people when it comes to the things they like. After swallowing Earth, human genes will also be recorded on Divine Dao Star, and the first pair of humans will be born here. For Star-Lord, this is nothing more than a captive game of keeping the things he likes on a planet." Chapter 921. Star-Lord of Divine Dao Star. Male. A member of the Divine Dragon Clan. He was a sickly person. This was all the information he had learned from Guoping regarding this Star-Lord. There were only two ways to fight a sickly person. 1. The sickly person likes you, accepts, lives happily with the sickly person. 2. The sickly person likes you, rejects you, dies with a chopper. But it was very clear that Star-Lord's sickly person was of the highest level. He wouldn't even take the initiative to say that he liked you. As long as it was something he liked, he would take it for himself. So Wang Ling could tell that if this matter wasn't properly resolved in the end, a new Adam and Eve would reappear on Divine Dao Star. But whether it's a divine dragon person or a little dragon person, let's test our hands first, Bai Chao said. Since Miss Bai has made up her mind, I will naturally fully support you. But remember, you have to be quick, we don't have much time left. Guoping frowned deeply. Manipulating his wristwatch, he spread out a map in the air. Star-Lord's divine palace is marked with an asterisk. I bribed a lizard man to create a disguise. Should we sneak in and assassinate him? Do you want Jingku to assassinate the king of Qin? No need to go through so much trouble. Bai Qiao shook her head and crossed her arms. We've always preferred a head-on confrontation. Guoping. At that moment, he looked at the youngster with dead fish eyes. It was this youngster who had said in his mind at the very beginning, "Beat up Star-Lord." But this youngster really looked ordinary. Forget it, it wasn't like Guoping couldn't understand why people said that youngsters were frivolous. In any case, attacking Star-Lord would ultimately depend on this Miss Bai Qiao. She was the most powerful person on Earth. As for these high school students who had been dragged into Divine Dao Star along with him, Guoping hadn't counted on them at all. What could high school students do? 3 years of college entrance exams and 5 years of simulations were the way to go. At the same time, all the cultivators on Earth above the soul formation stage felt an energy fluctuation they had never seen before in the sky. This was a power they had never seen before. In Mountain Pavilion, General Yi was playing chess with the head of state. Princeps placed a black chess piece, and the chessboard split into several pieces in an instant. Old E, that's not very kind of you. Don't buy a magic chessboard just because you don't want to lose. If you lose, it will automatically explode. I didn't put that much force into the move I just placed. You've misunderstood, Your Excellency. Although this chessboard belongs to Dongqin, it has nothing to do with magic. Your Excellency should have sensed a special fluctuation in the sky. General Yi raised his head. He was dressed in white exercise clothes with a red streamer around his waist. There's something wrong with this fluctuation. The head of state frowned, then turned to Steward Tang next to him. Tang Chen, call Wuxia Alliance and the Office of Strategic Deception and ask if they're conducting experiments. Inside the Magic Equipment Research Institute, all the academicians were on standby. Wang Ming and Zhai Yin swiftly rushed to the scene to direct the repairs. Just 5 minutes ago, all the monitoring instruments in the Research Institute suddenly went haywire. This was something that had never happened before. Even when the gate between worlds descended, only a tenth of the dashboard was damaged due to abnormal energy fluctuations. Don't panic, everyone. Follow Plan 1 and stabilize the data on the dashboard first. Wang Ming gave instructions with both hands in his trouser pockets. With his appearance, order started to return to the scene. The appearance of the most powerful brain naturally had the power to stabilize morale. But the truth was that Wang Ming's hands in his pockets were sweaty. He had just spoken to Dean Qi on the phone. They weren't the only ones in the Research Institute. At the same time, research institutes around the world were experiencing the same abnormalities, and several satellites from neighboring countries had fallen. This was an invasion of an unknown energy source. Wang Ming narrowed his eyes and stared at the dashboard with all kinds of erratic pointers, his expression extremely grave. The situation was very bad. Even worse was that he had just pinpointed Wang Ling's position. His stupid Oduaduo's coordinates were actually at the Office of Strategic Deception's new internet cafe. The world was about to be destroyed, but he was still playing games. With Guoping's remote assistance and Bai Qiao leading the way, everyone took Guoping's special alien aircraft to Star-Lord's Divine Palace. Guoping had retrieved this aircraft from the junkyard and then repaired it with the planet's energy, so it wouldn't arouse the suspicion of any monsters when it flew in the air. It's time to fight the boss already? The plot was developing faster than Super Chen had expected as he piloted the aircraft forward. In the past, Super Chen had often played flight simulation games, and now he was unexpectedly stable in the alien aircraft. Hero Gua and Little Peanut sat in the front seats. So, whether or not we can clear the game in the end depends on Boss Bai. But why did my uncle leave an Easter egg for Boss Bai to fight Star-Lord? Little Peanut said. It's obvious that the game designer is a lullicon. In our group, only Boss Bai is a girl. So Boss Bai was the chosen one, Hero Gua replied. Until now, the three of them still didn't know that this wasn't a game, and that everything was real. But Bai Qiao still didn't point it out. Wang Ling sat obediently at the back of the ship. Divine Dao Star didn't have any spirit chi, but this didn't stop Bai Qiao and Feng Xing from showing off their prowess, since Wang Ling himself was a mobile spring. Wang Ling looked like he was resting with his eyes closed, but in fact he was thinking about what kind of buffs he should give to the people in the aircraft. In the end, that Star-Lord was a difficult person to deal with. Naturally, This battle couldn't be taken lightly. So as the aircraft approached Star-Lord's divine palace, Super Chen and the others suddenly realized that there were many colorful halos around them. What's this? Hero Gua asked. It looks like a buff. Super Chen said. Little Peanut swallowed. Is it the legendary resupply before a great battle? At that moment, Wang Ling was silently reciting an incantation at the back of the aircraft. Supreme Strength, Selfless Halo. Super Godly Wisdom Magic Halo. Holy Supreme Barrier. Indomitable Heart of the Strong. Smelly Shameless Drag, Thicker Skin, Iron Wall Halo. Wasteland Milk Cavalry, Distant Eye Poison Milk Barrier that kills on touch. Dong Qing, the world's most powerful blinding power. Crushing Gravity that causes you to gain 1.5 kilograms during festivals. Heavenly Emperor Huang's Grave Disco Dance, Vigorous Regeneration Magic Halo. Chapter 922. In the blink of an eye, more than 30 halos stacked on top of each other like the 5 rings of the Olympic Games. Everyone in the aircraft had their bodies clasped tightly together. With so many magic halos on them, even if Super Chen and the others were just Foundation Establishment high school students, their current battle strength couldn't be underestimated. Although Super Chen had already expected that there would be supplies before a big battle, he hadn't expected this game to be so King, user-friendly. This was giving them way too many supplies. It looks like this game is still a trial version. It's more important to have fun playing it. Super Chen's smile gradually became more and more insolent as he piloted the aircraft. He hadn't expected this game to actually be a decompression game. I feel like I've become very strong. Little Peanut looked at his hands in disbelief. This is quite a lot of supplies. Master of Dopey couldn't help exclaiming. It felt like they were besieging a motorboat with 10 aircraft carriers. The main city district is up ahead, and we're about to reach Star-Lord's divine palace. Gua Ping's voice came from the aircraft, and Super Chen steadily piloted the aircraft forward. As soon as they entered the main city area, several lizard men riding wyverns chased after them. They shouted in divine Dao star language, but this time, everyone understood them. The aircraft was equipped with simultaneous interpretation software, which had also been designed by Gua Ping. Warning! You've broken into the main city district by speeding. Please stop the aircraft immediately for inspection. One of the lizard men riding wyverns in front raised his silver spear and pointed it at the aircraft. In a flash, a huge shockwave erupted from the tip of the spear and shot toward the aircraft. Super Chen skillfully dodged the attack in the aircraft, and even did a 360-degree turn in the air. No matter how he turned, he didn't miss anything. Wang Ling, who was sitting in the back, was also thinking that Super Chen might be a good immortal boat pilot in the future. In front of them, a golden palace as large as a mountain appeared in front of them. The palace towered into the clouds, and there was an endless divine light lingering over the palace. The stone pillars were engraved with characters that no one had ever seen before, and there were several divine chains hanging down from the top, firmly fixing the entire palace to the ground like a tent. That was the most shocking part of it all. This was because such a huge golden palace was actually floating in the air. As long as the divine chains were retracted, the Star-Lord Divine Palace could change its position at will. The lizard men who were in charge of intercepting the spacecraft were unable to stop it. The shock waves from their silver spears barely hit the spacecraft. Even if they did, they were bounced back by the spacecraft. Everyone in the aircraft was buffed, and the aircraft was affected by the radiation of the buff at the same time. It also had the effects of various halos. In front of the Golden Palace, there were a few lizard men that looked completely different from the soldiers in charge of intercepting them. They had dragon wings on their backs and no dragon tails. Even their auras were different from the lizard men riding on flying dragons. This Earthling really doesn't know what's good for him. He even dares to barge into Star-Lord's divine palace. Our Star-Lord has already captured their strongest person with a great divine ability. Sooner or later, Earth will be in our divine Dao Star's pocket, and humans will soon be enslaved by us divine dragons. These people are just courting death by barging in. I don't think it's a big deal to be the strongest. Who is the strongest person in this aircraft? I heard it's that girl, the one with white hair. The rest of the Earthlings are just trash who got dragged into this. Everyone in the aircraft was covered in halos, And even the six senses of Super Chen and the other Foundation establishment cultivators were magnified countless times over. As soon as these lizard men commanders spoke, everyone's eyes instantly focused on them. Wang Ling didn't even have to make a move, but these lizard men commanders were already shaken out of the air by this formidable spiritual pressure. What kind of formidable deterrence was this? The lizard men commanders knelt on the ground and looked up at the sky. Each of them was stupefied. That wasn't right. Star-Lord had evaluated that white-haired girl's battle strength, and it was impossible for her to have this kind of terrifying pressure. Godly power was more than 10 times denser than spirit power, which was also why Su Xing hadn't been able to break through the godly power barrier before. If he didn't use a spell that exceeded the density of godly power, he wouldn't be able to damage the barrier at all. It was obvious that Wang Ling had also noticed this. So he had been very calm from the beginning, because he just needed to use a higher density of spirit power. But Wang Ling was the only one who could compress spirit energy like this. This required the caster to be able to precisely control the density of each spirit energy molecule absorbed from the spirit chi, and then compress the spirit energy molecules into a ball of spirit power. General Yi's Palm Sword and the Old Devil's Chaos Ball were both high-density spirit power spells, but compared with Wang Ling's current compression technique, they weren't worth mentioning. So, after Wang Ling adjusted the density of spirit power, he cast the boundless halo of this high-density spirit power on everyone in the aircraft. In just a split second, the natural order was subverted. This powerful spiritual pressure caused all the lizard men commanders to fall on the spot. The halo of crushing gravity that makes you gain 3 kilograms every festive festival affected them deeply. In disbelief, the lizard men commanders found it difficult to even lift their eyelids, and even their eyelashes drooped down. Anyone who trespasses on Star-Lord's divine palace will be killed without mercy. At that moment, a golden-scaled divine dragon lizard arrived. He was wearing light armor from head to toe, and his aura was much higher than that of the lizard men commander kneeling on the ground. It's the left protector of the front hall. Sensing this aura, one of the commanders below was delighted. Who was the left protector of the front hall of Star-Lord's divine palace? He was the gatekeeper who guarded the entire divine palace. As soon as he appeared, his aura swept across the area, as if forming a counterbalance. Inside the aircraft, everyone's eyes stared at him. A few seconds later, the commander on the ground screamed as the left protector of the front hall fell from the air and hit him, knocking him out on the spot. On the ground, the left protector of the front hall covered his face. This was too shameful. He hadn't expected that he wouldn't be cool for more than 3 seconds. He actually couldn't withstand the oppressive aura of this bunch of earthlings at all. Trespassers on Star-Lord's divine palace, I want to see what kind of trash you are. At that moment, another person flew out of Star-Lord's divine palace. It's the left protector of the front hall. The commander was delighted again. The left protector is much stronger than me. He'll definitely be able to deal with this bunch. On the ground, the left protector was full of confidence. Then, this left protector of the front hall was also stared at by the earthlings in the aircraft. At that moment, Wang Ling looked down and saw that the most miserable commander had already been buried alive. Above the commander were the left protector and the right protector. Hey! What kind of monster is this? I, the left protector of the middle hall, have come to accept your challenge. Another voice rang out from Star-Lord's divine palace. F***K. There's no end to this. Super Chen patted the steering wheel. In the next moment, to avoid the suspicion that the author had faked the number of words again, he drove the aircraft directly into the palace. Sogu Reading Website. Chapter 923. A group of people had broken into Star-Lord's divine palace in an aircraft. For a moment, the whole of Divine Dao Star was shaken. Enslaved monsters from various planets poured into the entrance to the main city, and a dense army of lizardman cavalry in the sky maintained order and suppressed them. This was something that had never happened before. The moment Super Chen's aircraft smashed through the fortress and broke into the divine palace, the demons from all walks of life unleashed their long-suppressed resentment. They had originally come from different planets and lived in peace and harmony. If Divine Dao Star hadn't forcibly devoured their home planet, they wouldn't have lived here and been enslaved by Star-Lord. Recalling what had happened back then, the monsters still felt a deep resentment in their hearts. In that moment, The grief of having their families torn apart and their families broken up erupted. Super Chen's crash was like the echo of a clock that had spanned centuries, shaking the hearts of the billions of monsters on Divine Tao Star. Speaking the mother tongues of their respective planets, they frantically used their strength to besiege the entrance to the main city, regardless of their gender or age. This momentum shook the Divine Dragons, the leader of Divine Tao Star's race. "What do we do, sir?" For a moment, the Divine Dragons were a little flustered. The outside of Star-Lord's Divine Palace was in chaos. The left and right guardians of the front and middle halls had been knocked out one after another, and the invaders' aircraft had crashed into the rear hall, smashing through several barriers one after another. But that wasn't all they had to deal with. Outside the main city, monsters were besieging it from all directions. This was the drawback of plundering planets for a long time. Although they had devoured the energy of those planets, because of cultural differences, most of the monsters were more attached to their mothers. Once a riot broke out, it would be difficult to stop it. The captain of the Divine Dragons, a lizard man in golden armor, was also the commander of the Imperial Army of 20 million Divine Dragons. At that moment, his expression was a little grave. Someone had broken into Star-Lord's Divine Palace, and directly crashed into it with an aircraft. This had never happened before. And it was precisely because of this unprecedented incident that the monsters were almost on the verge of losing their courage. Who would have thought? At that moment, the captain of the Divine Dragons felt very conflicted. Their race had plundered countless planets, some of which were even more powerful and formidable than Earth. Furthermore, the pattern had been the same every time. Directly enslave the strongest person on a planet, and then plunder the planet. But who would have thought that a mere Earth would cause such a mess? "Sir, 20 million of us won't be able to stop them. The monsters have broken through the 18th ring of the main city." At this time, a Divine Dragon came to report the news. He was injured and looked miserable. What they had to face now was billions of monsters from different planets pouring in from all directions. It was unrealistic to use 20 million Imperial Guards to stop them. First, set up a barrier around the 15th ring. As for the rest, don't block them. The Divine Dragon Knight captain's expression darkened, and he quickly made a decision: kill without mercy. That intruder. Don't worry about those people on Earth for now. What we need to do is suppress them. The monsters on these planets were nothing but slaves. How could he allow a slave to defy his superior? Those people on Earth who dared to barge into the Star-Lord's Divine Palace won't be able to live for long. The Divine Dragon Knight sneered. This is a suicidal act. The Star-Lord will deal with them. With the reminder from the commander of the Imperial Guards, a reign of terror broke out on Divine Tao Star. Billions of living creatures rioted, and all the living creatures on Divine Tao Star launched a collective attack in the direction of the main city. In the base, Guoping's eyes brimmed with tears as he watched the scene on the screen. He didn't know how long he had waited for this day. All kinds of blood flowed from the living creatures of different planets, which intertwined to form a rainbow of colors that spilled over the entire street. Super Chen's aircraft was unimpeded, and there was practically no one to stop him. Countless Divine Dragons in Star-Lord's Divine Palace rode their flying dragons to the front lines to suppress the riots, and had no time to care about Super Chen and the others' movements. Furthermore, they couldn't stop them at all. The buff group piloted this old aircraft, which was also affected by the buff, on a rampage. Several Divine Dragon Knights were killed on the spot, and even the flying dragons they were riding underground. This aircraft was really too violent, and pierced through the stomachs of the flying dragons like a knife with a strong halo and special effects, leaving the Divine Dragons completely speechless. Are they really Earthlings? Didn't they say that Earthlings aren't strong? The lips of many of the Divine Dragons twitched. Just as they were about to reach the inner hall, Super Chen parked the aircraft at Guoping's request. Next, we'll split up. Nephew Gua, Yu, Super Chen, Su Xiao and Feng Xing will return to the outskirts of the city to fight the commander of the Dragon Knights Imperial Guard. The short guy in the photo who looks like Pan Chongjiang is the commander of the Imperial Guard. Remember what he looks like. Miss Bai Qiao and classmate Wang Ling will be in charge of fighting Star-Lord. Guoping directly assigned the tasks. Actually, Bai Qiao and Feng Xing had secretly discussed this with Guoping before. It was only then that Guoping realized why Super Chen and the others had been looking at him so strangely. They were completely treating him like a game character. But it was fine. Guoping didn't expose them, and directly followed Bai Qiao and Feng Xing's instructions. Bai Qiao, Feng Xing, and Guoping had already prepared the specifics beforehand. As Feng Xing had expected, Super Chen wasn't very satisfied with the tasks assigned. Why is Wang Ling going to fight the boss? We're going to kill the minions. 1. This is a random assignment. 2. Classmate Wang Ling is the mascot. Only by completing both tasks will you be considered to have cleared the game. You're the first beta testers of this game. If you can clear it, you'll get a mysterious reward, Guoping replied according to the plan they had discussed earlier. Fine. As long as there's a reward. After saying this, Super Chen instantly had no objections. And so, Wang Ling and Bai Qiao were put down on the aircraft. Feng Xing looked at Wang Ling and was a little reluctant to part with him, but he had to go with Super Chen and the others. Coupled with his combat strength, it would be a piece of cake for him to deal with the commander of the Imperial Guard with just a little guidance. Miss Bai and the mascot, good luck, Super Chen said excitedly as he piloted the aircraft. Wang Ling. Just as Super Chen's aircraft left, a ray of light shot out from the inner hall up ahead in the direction of the aircraft. Bai Qiao spread out her ahogue and blocked the light on the spot. In the inner hall, Star-Lord, who loved Earth culture, spoke in Mandarin which he was still figuring out. You're like the strongest inner lady on Earth? I've underestimated that lump of yours. Bai Qiao and Wang Ling were stunned. This Star-Lord even learned freaking Northeastern Chinese. But Star-Lord's words instantly put Wang Ling's heart at ease. He had initially thought that this Star-Lord was something. In the end, he hadn't expected the other party to think that Bai Qiao was the strongest. What kind of expert was she if she couldn't even tell? She had caught Bai Qiao and was making a big fuss here. Chapter 924. The person sitting on the golden throne in the middle of the hall was tall and straight, and his eyes were like lightning as he looked down. He had completely changed his appearance to that of an earthling. I've been waiting here for you for a long time, Star-Lord said. He had already mastered Earth's culture. As the atmosphere gradually turned serious, his northeastern accent switched to a normal tone. Expansion and devouring have brought about today's chaotic situation. I'd like to see how you're going to clean up after this. Bai Qiao's eyes narrowed and her pupils contracted. At the same time, she channeled her spirit energy bit by bit into the ahogue on her head. Fearless resistance. As the strongest person on Earth, your battle strength is far inferior to mine. Even if you don't think about yourself, you should think about the children you've dragged into this together with you. They're just a bunch of high school students. They could have lived on Divine Tao Star, but now, because of you, they're all going to die. Star-Lord sneered a little mockingly, and the coldness on his face deepened. He sat upright on the throne, unmoving, and intense godly power shot out of his eyes to suppress Bai Qiao, making her feel an intense pressure. If it wasn't for the layers of halos around her, Bai Qiao didn't know if she would have been able to resist this heavy pressure. You're interesting. You actually refined the hair on your head into a magic artifact. Among the many planets I've plundered before, there's also a race called Mocking Star, which is quite similar to you. Are you a distant relative of theirs? After probing Bai Qiao with godly pressure, Star-Lord mocked her. Come down and fight. Bai Qiao snorted, her fighting spirit surging. I'm Star-Lord of Divine Tao Star. I'm a god. Naturally, I have to sit high and mighty on the throne. You'll never have the right to make me come down, Star-Lord said coldly. Bai Qiao's expression was calm as she chuckled. Since you're already familiar with Earth's culture, you should know that there are some things you shouldn't say. The faster you raise your flag, the faster you die. How dare you? How dare you curse Star-Lord? Next to Star-Lord, a divine dragon spoke up. This person wore a black bamboo hat and an iron mask on his face. He was Star-Lord's personal servant. In the entire Star-Lord's divine palace, apart from Star-Lord, this person's aura was the most powerful. I'm talking to your master. You pervert in an S&M mask. You're so rude. Bai Qiao's poisonous tongue didn't diminish in the slightest as she retorted with a snort. You rude and arrogant bastard. To deal with someone like you, there is no need for Sir Star-Lord to take action. The servant gritted his teeth in hatred and took off his bamboo hat. A powerful bloodline aura gushed out from his pores, and golden red patterns spread all over his body. For a moment, A dragon's roar resounded in the inner hall. The roar of the dragon god? Bai Qiao's eyes turned cold, and with a flick of her ahog, the boundless halo around her turned into a waterfall that shot out. This strike was extremely heavy, and it caused the servant to let out a blood-curdling scream. Half of his body was lacerated, and he was sent flying on the spot. Wang Ling hadn't given Bai Qiao these dozens of buffs for nothing. The unexpected pain and lethality caused this personal servant to suffer greatly. Blood sprayed out as he was sent flying, and he crashed into a palace pillar, which broke on the spot. In the end, Star-Lord frowned at this scene. The other party raised his hand, and just by shaking a finger, it was as if time had flowed backward in front of him. The servant who had been swept away recovered from his injuries and returned to his original position, and the palace pillar that had been broken was also restored to its original state. Star-Lord was a little unhappy that his servant had lost face. He frowned and stared at the servant. "Back off, useless thing." The servant's injuries had recovered, and even his memory of how he had been injured just now had disappeared. Seeing Star-Lord's anger, the servant immediately understood that he had probably been defeated just now. Bai Qiao looked at Star-Lord. "Reverse time. I'm a god. Naturally I can do anything." Star-Lord played it down as he said flatly, "To control time is to control everything. Not just time, but all the Tao in the universe is in my hands. This Tao is divine Tao. Although I only have this one Tao, it can rival everything, and no one can match it. The power of divine Tao." Behind Bai Qiao, Wang Ling lowered his eyes. He had never heard of this kind of power. He knew about heavenly Tao and outer Tao. But what on earth was divine Tao? The universe was so big that there were all kinds of strange things. Even Wang Ling didn't know about them. Star-Lord sat upright on his throne and smiled coldly. Compared with divine Tao, heavenly Tao and outer Tao are just a drop in the ocean. The power of my one divine Tao is equivalent to 10,000 heavenly Tao. If I develop a second divine Tao, a third divine Tao, a fourth divine Tao, who in the universe can do anything to me? This king is a genius. Comprehending divine Tao on my own is what I have now. You're too conceited. Bai Qiao took a deep breath and did her best to remain calm as Star-Lord spoke. Facing divine Tao Star-Lord, she was under unprecedented pressure. The power of divine Tao was really too fierce. One divine Tao was equivalent to 10,000 heavenly Tao. So, are you going to conquer the universe with this one divine Tao? Bai Qiao stared at Star-Lord. This king will definitely have to open a second and third divine Tao, but so far, this divine Tao alone is almost enough for me to rule the entire universe. Star-Lord laughed. This king is a genius. If I want to cultivate, I can do so at any time. It's not as interesting as conquering the universe. You unambitious thing, you'll be done for in the future. Bai Qiao waved her ahog forward, and a beam of divine light shot into the sky from the top of her head, turning into a giant golden sword that slashed at the lofty throne. Star-Lord's eyes were cold. He sighed in his heart. Earth was really the weakest planet he had ever conquered, and this was all the strongest person could do. He was extremely disappointed. Petty tricks. You actually want to use this unsightly thing against this king? He blocked the giant golden sword with his little finger and flicked it away. The aftermath of divine Tao bombarded Bai Qiao, and even several layers of her buff were broken. Bai Qiao's ahog was shaken until it withered and split, which made her feel extremely irritated. Are you done yet? Boss. At that moment, Bai Qiao finally couldn't help looking at Wang Ling behind her. 5 seconds left. Wang Ling looked back at Bai Qiao. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The divine Tao analysis was complete. When the aura of divine Tao erupted from Wang Ling, Star-Lord's expression finally changed. F***K. He knew there was something wrong with this dead fish eye. Chapter 925. People could never stop learning. A famous writer once said, "Man is a thinking reed." Natural selection and survival of the fittest. All things in heaven and earth abided by this principle, and so did life. Wang Ling was only 16 years old this year, and his mind hadn't matured yet, which was why he couldn't stop learning for even a moment. Now that his mind was able to grow up healthily and hadn't been led astray, It was all thanks to Father and Mother Wang's education. When all was said and done, the couple were in the field of literature, and had written so many novels in which the protagonists were Chunibu. Naturally, they knew how to let their children grow up strong and healthy in all aspects of morality, intelligence, physique, beauty, and labor. Just like now, it had taken Wang Ling dozens of seconds to analyze and master Divine Tao. I'm really a slow learner. Wang Ling was a little disappointed. He learned everything very quickly, and could grasp it in a fraction of a second. No matter how difficult the Olympiad math question was, as long as he grasped the offensive and problem-solving routines, he could almost always solve the problem in a microsecond. In the end, this Divine Tao had actually taken him dozens of seconds. Wang Ling thought he had already learned enough, but now he realized that he still needed to practice his learning ability. Dozens of seconds was too slow. Wang Ling had already decided that after this was over, he would buy a few more sets of 3-5 and go back to read them. It looked like he hadn't been practicing enough. Was it because he hadn't written enough? Wang Ling pondered in his heart. Although the characteristics of the monster pen and the goblin eraser meant that he had to master 100% of their knowledge before they could do his homework for him, on the other hand, they had also cultivated his laziness. This couldn't go on. As an outstanding young man who upheld the core values of cultivation, Wang Ling felt that he should pursue progress even more. You! On the other side, Divine Tao Star-Lord stared at Wang Ling from his throne. If this Miss Bai Qiao hadn't pointed it out in public, he would never have thought that this youngster was the truly difficult person to deal with. He should have sensed it long ago. The magic rings on Bai Qiao didn't belong to her at all, so who had helped her add them to them? Now, Divine Tao Star-Lord finally realized where the problem lay. Every time he plundered a planet, he would first determine the strongest person on that planet and imprison them on Divine Tao Star before he made his move. This time, his first target was Bai Qiao. As for Wang Ling, in Divine Tao Star-Lord's view, this was someone who had been completely implicated. And this person was really only 16 years old. Cultivators could use spells and elixirs to delay their aging, but the vitality contained in their bodies would gradually fade as they grew older. This was a major indicator used by cultivators to determine a cultivator's age. Similarly, this kind of thing could not be faked. Experts could see through the vitality in a person's aura at a glance. He could sense that Wang Ling's body was brimming with vitality. It was a symbol of youth. Star-Lord's eyes flickered with killing intent. He gazed at Wang Ling and said in an extremely cold voice, "One genius in this universe is enough. This high and mighty throne is only fit for this prince to enjoy." Placing his hand on the armrest, he injected godly power into the 7 colored gems embedded in the armrest. In a split second, a tremendous amount of godly power surged out in all directions with an incomparably dazzling golden light. Wang Ling stood on the spot, motionless. Hiding behind him, Bai Qiao felt a sense of security. Such overwhelming godly pressure crashed down on him like raging waves, but Wang Ling's small body was like an island in the middle of a vast ocean that didn't move at all. With a wave of his hand, he casually released another wave of godly pressure to counteract the force. Behind him, Bai Qiao was dumbstruck. There was the cry of a phoenix. Several 3-headed phoenixes actually flew out of the 7 colored gems which had been injected with godly power earlier. These were already extinct creatures, like the prehistoric vicious Kuan which Wang Zhan had raised in captivity. They were also species from the primordial era, and were now extinct. Wang Ling had only seen these creatures in the cultivation encyclopedia. Even the museum didn't have a complete display of them, and only had 3D models made from the remains of bones. If the origin bones were put on display, it was inevitable that they would be coveted by criminals. These vicious creatures could also be called divine beasts. From head to toe, they were treasures, and were even more valuable than holy beasts. Back then, the holy beast race had been eaten to the point of extinction because of a rumor. There was no telling what would happen if these divine beasts came back to the world. Wang Ling could already imagine what these guys would look like when they became food on a plate. 7 3-headed phoenixes spat out rainbow divine fire as they charged at Wang Ling. Wang Ling gazed at the palace in front of him without a ripple in his eyes. These 7 adult 3-headed phoenixes had wings that were dozens of zhong long when spread open, and they had astonishing godly power. It was clear that they had been raised by Star-Lord since they were very young. Their noble bloodlines were much more brilliant than the vicious Kuans. Star-Lord believed that he was omnipotent, so Wang Ling wasn't surprised at all that he had these battle pets. Didn't Wang Zhan, that rookie, open a fishery to raise kuans? The rainbow divine fire of an adult three-headed phoenix was more powerful than he had imagined, but the flames weren't able to penetrate Wang Ling's barrier. Wang Ling had now comprehended divine Tao, and with the support of the 3,000 great Tao of the 10 universes, his formidable battle strength was enough for him to withstand any injury. But these 7 three-headed phoenixes had been raised by Star-Lord since they were young, and in their hearts, they already believed that Star-Lord was the strongest in the universe, so they didn't care about Wang Ling at all. Blasphemy against the gods. Only death awaits. The three-headed phoenix in the lead spoke. It opened its beak full of sharp teeth and flapped its slender wings. Several wind feathers flew out, accompanied by the rainbow divine fire, and pierced Wang Ling's vitals. Stand down. Wang Ling didn't even look as he waved his hand with the back of his hand. The rainbow divine fire that filled the sky was actually extinguished. Before the three-headed phoenixes could react, the force of this hand sent all 7 of them spinning. Before Star-Lord could repair them, the 7 three-headed phoenixes he had summoned had already turned into 7 pools of blood that exploded against the palace walls. The 7 three-headed phoenixes were as weak as mosquitoes. Unable to withstand a single blow, Star-Lord's expression finally changed. He got up from the throne and glared at Wang Ling. Very good, very good. You're the first to make this king get up. However, before he could even finish saying the word, get up, a voice interrupted his thoughts. Wang Ling didn't speak, but a terrifying voice that shook the soul rang out in Star-Lord's mind. Since you like to sit, then never get up. Wang Ling curled the corners of his lips and took a step forward. Divine Tao Star-Lord felt a huge pressure on his shoulders, and he sat back down. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.